Chapter 389, The goal. The lights continuously changed on Zhuomo's hands. His brow was tightly furrowed. Little Yao arts flowed like water past his fingertips. He had a serious expression and did not dare to slack off. As the tornado increased in strength, he could clearly feel the pressure increase along with it. He to use 120% of his attention for each step. If he was the least bit careless, he would be drowned in the barrage of attacks. The fire Yao arts the other cast were extremely unorthodox and completely different than anything he had encountered before. What had attracted his attention though was the Yao art imprint from Wang Lin's consciousness that he had deconstructed. That Yao art imprint had been strange and poisonous. It was completely different than these explosive Yao arts he was seeing now. Zhuomo focused attentively on the chaotic-looking fire Yao arts. Like a fish swimming, his consciousness locked onto every Yao art that passed in front of him. He was unusually calm, his mind and eyes clear like a serene lake. The Yao arts passed like flickering silhouettes flashing across the lake. The reflections that these Yao arts created on the lake's surface gradually became clear. Zhuomo did not blink. His steps were like that of a butterfly weaving between flowers, the little Yao arts on his hands extremely accurate and appearing at the most appropriate time. With his attention occupied, even he did not detect his own transformation. Time was like a line that grew longer the more it was pulled. The lightning-fast Yao arts and fire seemed to become increasingly slow. Each Yao art was unprecedentedly clear in Zhuomo's eyes. They seemed to pass by like snails. Every minuscule detail clearly landed in Zhuomo's eyes. The wondrous feeling did not cause Zhuomo to feel excited. His face was peaceful, and he searched for the traces of what interested him among these Yao arts. The Yao art imprint inside Wang Lin was his target this time. The abundant fire Yao arts looked domineering, but were not what he desired. Just at this time, the lights on Zhuomo's hands finally stabilized. The faint glowing light seemed to form a thin and small glove of light that enveloped his palm. This Yao art was called tactile knowledge grip. This was a Yao art that Zhuomo had created. It was not complex, but it had taken great mental effort. This Yao art could clearly identify the attributes of a Yao art and was a Yao art he created especially to help him deconstruct other Yao arts. But it was the first time that he used tactile knowledge grip in battle. A bloody red blade of fire came towards his neck at a difficult angle. Zhuomo raised his hand and grabbed at the blade of fire. A hand of light projected from his own and grabbed the blade of fire. The blade of fire shook fiercely as if it was a fish that had been captured and wanted to jerk out of the hand. Pew pew pew. The outer layers of the blade of flame quickly dissipated, and revealed a section of bloody vine. Zhuomo's eyes brightened and his hands moved in the air. The hand of light gripped onto the bloody vine. Such an unique construction. Zhuomo closed his eyes, and his consciousness shot at the bloody vine. The excited Mo Ru was stilled. Xiao Mo Gu actually closed his eyes. What was this guy thinking of doing? Did he want to surrender? Humph. Did Xiao Mo Gu think that he would let him off like that? Mo Ruhua's bloodlust had been aroused, and his fear of Zhuomo had been thrown out of his mind. A cruel smile suddenly came onto his face. Suddenly, his pupils expanded and his smile froze on his face. Inside the tornado, the figure of Xiao Mo Gu with his closed eyes became even hard to predict like wisps of smoke. The sky full of Yao arts couldn't even touch the corner of his clothes. Why? Mo Ruhua suddenly had a bad feeling. Just now, Xiao Mo Gu had been a sorry figure, but now he seemed so at ease as though he was strolling around. Had he been pretending before? There was a section of blood vine inside the blade of flame. Shocked, Zhuomo's interest rose. This was it. The bloody vine was what he was interested in. When he had been healing Wang Lin, he had found the bloody vine was very unique. It could securely root itself inside the consciousness of the enemy and was extremely hard to eradicate. Zuemo had spent a great deal of effort to deconstruct that little section of bloody vine. Some of its unique structure had interested him greatly. This was why he had especially waited for Mo Ruhua to come find him. Zuemo's style was to only act if there were benefits. He would not make trouble merely on behalf of Wang Lin. That little section of bloody vine excited Zuemo, but it was just a little section and not a complete structure. Zuemo required a more complete bloody vine because this seemed related to another Yao art. 10 breaths later, Zuemo crushed the little section of bloody vine that he had finished studying and started to search for the next target. The light grip was a new Yao art he made. It was constructed from 12 little Yao arts and specifically used to peel away the outer layers of the others' fire Yao arts. His use of little Yao arts were at a mastery level. Even Pu Yao would occasionally praise it. After continuously capturing 6 fire Yao arts, Zuemo found that the bloody vine inside these fire Yao arts were not very different. He frowned again. The bloody vines inside these fire Yao arts were still incomplete. He raised his head and narrowed his eyes towards Mo Ruhua. It seemed that he had to get this guy to put more effort in. Mo Ruhua coincidentally saw Zuemo's gaze and his body was instantly chilled. His face was ugly. The other seemed to have adjusted to his illusory flame tornado. Damn it! Why was it like this? The fantasy flame tornado was one of his killing moves and had never failed before. Viciousness flashed through his eyes. Having escalated the fighting to this point, if it was not you that died, it would be me. He gritted his teeth and burrowed into the tornado. Zuemo stilled at Mo Ruhua's action. He quickly had a wary expression. The fantasy flame tornado that had been rampaging about suddenly became silent without any decrease in speed. The fire Yao arts inside the tornado flew backwards rapidly. Mo Ruhua was like a strong magnet, attracting all the fire Yao arts to fly over. A strange and dangerous presence covered Zuemo. Zuemo was motionless as he stared at Mo Ruhua in the sky. Mo Ruhua was surrounded by all kinds of fire Yao arts. He glared at Zuemo and insanity flashed through his eyes. All of his thoughts disappeared at this time, his consciousness was all consumed. The fire Yao arts floating around him suddenly released an enchanting red light. Pia. Like magnets, fire Yao arts were attracted to each other. Pia pia pia. The fire Yao arts around Mo Ruhua were combining into pairs and trios to become even larger fire Yao art. The powerful presence was like a gust of wind that blew at Zuemo. Zuemo narrowed his eyes, his hands were like blooming flowers. Tactile knowledge grip was used to its limits. Threads of light floated from between his hands and the mist-like light formed a crystal-like ball of light in the air above Zuemo's dancing hands. He used the layering method of sky glass wave, on, tactile knowledge grip, to form this crystal ball of light. Lights continuously flew out of Zuemo's blurred fingers and entered the crystal ball of light. The ball of light slowly revolved and gradually formed a glass-like hand. Zuemo's narrowed eyes became brighter. Every minuscule change in the space surrounding the glass hand would appear in his eyes. Even the thin hair-like strands of spiritual power that passed by the hand would be accurately captured by Zuemo. It was the first time he had used the tactile knowledge grip like this. Mo Ruhua seemed to be surrounded by an aura of red light. The enchanting red light carried the presence of blood. The fire Yao arts floating by his side had completely changed. Their mass was 5 or 6 times what it had been before. Zuemo's eyes brightened. Waves of strange spiritual thought came from these bloated fire Yao arts. Zuemo suddenly had a feeling that there seemed to be something alive inside each fire Yao art. Zuemo thought of one of his own Yao arts, archaic wasteland sacrificial art. Up until now, he had seen many Yao arts but this was the second Yao art that was like the archaic wasteland sacrificial art. Yao arts were Yao arts. No matter how strong they were, how powerful the presence it produced, but only these 2 Yao arts could produce vitality. When Zuoyamo had been deconstructing the Yao art imprint inside Wang Lin, he had detected the faint presence of life contained in the blood vine. This made him very curious. But it had not been as strong as what he was feeling now. The threads of spiritual thought inside the fire Yao arts were filled with a feeling of darkness and maliciousness. Compared to the archaic wasteland sacrificial art, the vitality contained in these fire Yao arts was much weaker and incomplete. But those threads of spiritual thought filled with vitality made Zuoyamo feel spirited like he never had been before. Archaic wasteland sacrificial art was his final ultimate move, and would be used to save his life at a crucial moment. Pu Yao had told him that the archaic wasteland sacrificial art was not one move, but a set of Yao arts. But no matter how Zuoyamo asked about the topic, Pu Yao never mentioned one bit about the other moves of this set of Yao arts. Pu Yao closed his mouth and never even discussed the origins of this wasteland beast. What Zuoyamo felt even more helpless about was that he could not find any similar Yao arts to refer to. He did not fear if Pu Yao did not tell him, but if he did not even have a Yao art to use as reference, then he could do nothing. Until today. This was the first Yao art Zuoyamo encountered that had attributes similar to the archaic wasteland sacrificial art. How could he let pass by? 5 enormous fire Yao arts floated next to Mo Ruhua. The 5 fire Yao arts were of different shapes. One was like the head of an axe, another like a snake, while the remaining 3 were hard to distinguish. Mo Ruhua's entire body was covered in the enchanting red light. The twisted face had a few hints of evil. Go die. Mo Ruhua bellowed. 5 dashes of red light tore the air and smashed toward Zuoyamo. Zuomo's pupils suddenly shrank, his hand seemed to wave weakly. The crystal hand was like the willow branch blown by the wind and coincidentally caught one of the red lights. In a moment, countless bits of information entered Zuomo's mind. Time seemed to stop during this moment. Zuomo's mind moved at an unprecedented speed as it digested the enormous amount of information that flooded it. In order to digest the information, he stopped all of his actions, and his body became motionless. He suddenly turned to a wooden puppet. A faint enchanting red light suddenly lit up in Zuomo's puppet-like eyes. The other 4 streaks of red light instantly flew in front of him. The bright red light reflected onto Zuomo's face. Mo Ruhua's roars of laughter came into his ears. Zuomo was motionless and had no intentions of dodging. No one noticed that the red light in his eyes suddenly exploded. The red light instantly engulfed Zuomo, laughing furiously in the air. Mo Ruhua did not notice a hair-think gray energy silently crept up his back, quickly permeated through it, and disappeared. Chapter 390, Working together. Wei Xing sat cross-legged with the black sword upright by his side. For some unknown reason, the corrosive fiendish mist would not come within 3 zhang of him. He opened his inky black eyes that shone with a determined light. His daily life was extremely routine, so routine it was frightening. Practicing the sword, meditation, and teaching others became the essential and only parts of his daily life. He would repeat the dull and monotonous cultivation over and over. He did not use Ling power, relying on just his physical body, to slice and chop until all of his strength was exhausted and his entire body trembled. A Jindan expert cultivating to the point that his body would not stop trembling. Both Zhong Ru and Yi Zheng, whose cultivation emphasized hard work, felt ashamed when they saw this kind of self-abusive and sadistic cultivation method, much less the sword show and guard camp. When everyone mentioned Wei Xing Darren, they would feel admiration from the depths of their hearts. Every person knew hard work and persistence could lead to improvement, but how many could do it? The only one that could reach Wei Xing's level was only Wei Xing Darren. Also a Jindan, Xia Shan had essentially become Wei Xing's manservant and followed him like a shadow. Wei Xing breathed out. Hiss, the fiendish mist 3 zhang away tore apart as though an invisible sword essence had cut through it. He had a satisfied expression. It may have been due to teaching others that he had recently comprehended much and improved greatly. Suddenly, a wail came from Zhuo Mo's tent. It was Shidi. Wei Xing's figure suddenly disappeared from his spot. Pain, pain. Ow, ow, so painful. Inside the tent, Zhuo Mo was jumping about as though a fire was lit on his butt. His mouth was open and his nose and brow was almost squeezed together. It hurts, hiss, so much. Zhuo Mo ran around in the tent like a headless chicken as though it could relieve his pain. Lil the fire seemed to have found a new toy and instantly became excited. It hung on to Zhuo Mo's behind and swung around as it chirped cheerfully. Seeing the chaotic scene, Wei Xing had a wry smile on his face. His heart relaxed. Shidi, what is it? You alright? Hiss, hiss, the sound of Zhuo Mo inhaling could be clearly heard. As he ran around, he waved his hand. Nothing, hiss, nothing. Lil Fire found it fun and seemed to mimic his speech. Chirp chirp, chirp, chirp chirp. Zhuo Mo glared angrily. Lil Fire was frightened and its body froze in the air. Hiss, Zhuo Mo inhaled again. His expression of fury instantly dissipated. His expression was very strange as he started to jump around in a hurry. Lil the fire recovered from fright and thought that Zhuo Mo was playing with it. It chirped happily as it leapt over and hung on behind Zhuo Mo. Wei Xing was helpless against Shidi's weirdness. He shook his head and left. Zhuo Mo knew that if he was thrown out of the wasteland beast chessboard, his consciousness would probably be injured, but he had not expected his consciousness injury to be so painful. If he had known, he definitely would not have done this dumb thing. It had been too long since he was last injured. Zhuo Mo had almost forgotten the pain of consciousness injuries. This time, it really was so painful he wanted to die. The damned little red. Wait for GE will return. As he breathed in jerks, Zhuo Mo gritted his teeth and swore an oath. Several black figures passed by like lightning, and several sharp edges crisscrossed in the air before suddenly appearing on the fiend soul beast. The fiend soul beast was instantly dismembered, and leaving behind only a black fong and a bead. The fong and the bead were put away. The hardship guards had joyful expressions. At this time, the expression of one of the people shifted. Gathering orders. Back to the camp, immediately. The other people quickly disappeared in the fiendish mist without another word. In the guard campgrounds, Xu Long looked at everyone who had finished gathering and was very comforted. Everyone's improvement in this time had been great and unexpected to him. All of the hardship guards that cultivated, hardship guard, had formed their weapons. He had originally predicted they would need 1 or 2 years and had not expected it to be complete in less than a month. He was filled with respect and awe towards the mystery Darren inside the necklace. In his view, that Darren could do anything. It was the guidance of this Darren in this recent while that caused everyone to all finish forming their weapons. All of the cultivation regimes had been personally prescribed by the mystery Darren. In this short month, the power of the entire guard camp had multiplied. His thoughts were interrupted by the gazes of those below him. He focused and said in a deep voice, in this recent while, everyone has cultivated successfully and finished forming the weapons. Good. Very good. Xu Long's praise caused the hardship guards below to raise their heads and puff up their chests, their faces bright. Xu Long had a warm personality, but he was extremely stern when he supervised their cultivation. Everyone felt honored to receive his praise and were very proud. The expressions of everyone landing in his eyes, the corners of Xu Long's mouth imperceptibly smiled. He then said in a serious tone, in order to commend everyone's recent efforts, Darren has passed down new cultivation techniques. Everyone below instantly had joy and anticipation on their faces. Everyone has to work hard on this, great day hardship guard. Its power is even greater. I won't say much, but only when our strength becomes strong can we give our service to Darren, to be able to protect Darren. Does everyone still remember the oath we took in the past? Whoosh, everyone simultaneously bowed, and said together, "Do not dare to forget." Every hardship guard had excitement on their faces. "You are too daring." Wei's expression was at ease as though he was narrating a small nondescript matter. "It is not so easy to modify a MO skill." "You feel guilty," Pu Yao said coldly. There was no warmth in his bloody pupil. "What do I feel guilty for?" Wei's voice did not ripple at all. Pu Yao smirked, his expression filled with scorn. "You definitely regret saying so much that day. You did not expect that I would deduce so much from your scattered rambling." "Yes, this point is unexpected to me." Wei openly nodded. "Your skill in Yao arts surpasses my imagination. A Yao who is able to change Mo's skills using Yao arts. I cannot accomplish this." "Of course you cannot do it." Pu Yao was not modest at all. Wei smiled slightly, and his star-like eyes were bright. "Your theoretical level is definitely the most outstanding that I have ever seen, but you lack experience. Spells, Yao arts, MO skills, they do come from a common root, but after so many years of development, the divisions are clear. No matter if it is Yao arts or MO skills, they have developed far on their own paths." Pu Yao lowered his head to think for a moment. When he raised his head, the scorn on his face had disappeared. He said seriously, "Your words are not wrong. My Yao art theory and knowledge are based on the experience of those before me. These are my fundamentals, but I lack the fundamentals of MO skills." "A very clear awareness," Wei calmly praised. "Your conditions," Pu Yao glanced at Wei and said coldly. "A complete golden soul." Wei raised a finger. "Half." Pu Yao shook his head. "Agreed." Wei unhesitantly nodded. He knew that even if he did not tell Pu Yao, with Pu Yao's talents, it would not be difficult to study and come to understand. He only needed to find some experimental subjects and make comparisons to come to the conclusion. Righteous Yao might not use these kinds of extreme methods, but for someone who was insane like Pu Yao, there was nothing that he would not do. Also, Wei's original intention was not to gain something from this transaction. He hoped that this was a good beginning. No matter if it was against Pu Yao or Zhui Mo, this was extremely important as those that cultivated, Great Day Hardship Guard, were Zhui Mo's subordinates. Wei was clear to the contents of the Great Day Hardship Guard, that Pu Yao had modified using the Great Day Mo physique. Pu Yao had not concealed any part of the process from him. He was also clear about the problems of the Great Day Hardship Guard. Truthfully, Pu Yao had shocked him greatly. A Yao that modified a MO skill. He had never heard of such a thing in his past. More crucially, the Great Day Hardship Guard that Pu Yao had modified had an extremely high-level skill. If this MO skill was thrown into the MO world, it definitely would become a MO skill that would be passed down in a clan. Wei was also clear that if he wanted to do anything, he needed to first prove his value. Because he had a practical landlord. He did not conceal anything, and proactively discussed with Pu Yao to make this MO skill even more complete. Pu Yao also saw Wei in a different light. Existences such as armor spirits might accumulate large amounts of knowledge because they had long lifespans, but they were not necessarily outstanding in terms of intelligence. But Wei showed how he was different compared to normal armor spirits. He did not just have a wealth of knowledge, he also had outstanding intelligence. This completely upended Pu Yao's understanding of armor spirits. He was slightly curious. The origins of this false gentleman didn't seem to be small. No matter how much of a biased opinion Pu Yao had towards Wei, the discussion went extremely smooth. These two geniuses quickly found synergy. A completely new, Great Day Hardship Guard, came out of the stove. When the skill was completed, Pu Yao and Wei exchanged a look and found the anticipations in each other's eyes. This completely new MO art, with the Hardship Guard as the foundation and merging the Great Day MO physique as well as Pu Yao's Yao arts, what heights would this reach? This was really worthy of anticipating. The next morning when Zuomo woke up, he found that the wounded consciousness that had caused him so much pain, had healed. What happened? Zuomo jumped up. He touched around and found that there was no pain. He hurriedly inspected his body. Had something new occurred inside his body? Calming down, he entered his inner perspective. He was completely shocked by the scene in front of him. Chapter 391, Great Mo Physique. The flame seed inside Zuomo's body tinged with gold flickered. These golden flames had extremely unique shapes. They seemed to be like overlapping waves, layered together. There were more than 5 layers. The color of each layer was different. The innermost layer was almost transparent, and the outermost layer was pure dazzling golden yellow. They burned silently. Zuomo suddenly recalled his golden crow fire seed. He hurried to look and his expression changed slightly. The golden crow fire had disappeared without a trace. Golden crow fire was a 4th-grade flame and it could completely fulfill any of his present demands. It could melt gold and iron easily, and was one of Zuomo's greatest assistants. Its sudden disappearance instantly made Zuomo slightly panicked. A thought suddenly jumped into his mind. Had some new change happened to the golden crow fire? His thoughts shifted, and the layered flame changed as expected. Pew! Large amounts of layered flame suddenly erupted out of Zuomo's palm and formed a hand of fire. Zuomo curiously put his hand in front of him. The boundaries between the layers of the golden layered flame were extremely clear. It exuded an astonishing heat, but his palm was as cold as ice. Zuomo found it interesting and his consciousness burrowed into the golden layered flame. Pew! The golden layered flame suddenly erupted. A pressuring heat, with Zuomo at the center, exploded outwards. The defensive formations of the tent suddenly lit up with a red glow and stopped this wave of heat. Pia pia pia. The red light retreated. There was a crackling like glass breaking and Zuomo's heart leapt when he heard this. The last layer of formations forcibly stopped this terrifying wave of heat. Zuomo instantly released a breath. However, when he saw the mess inside the tent, his heart shivered. There was a layer of black glass on the ground. This was because the heat had melted the granite. Zuomo instantly judged that the golden layered flame was better than the golden crow fire. At least 5th grade. Zuomo thought to himself somewhat cheerfully. If it wasn't that he knew the golden crow macro formation and could harvest golden crow fire at will, obtaining the 4th-grade golden crow fire would not be easy, much less obtaining this golden layered flame of a high grade. The golden layered flame had a higher grade, and was even more powerful. The requirement to control it was even higher. Zuomo thought to himself that he had to spend time studying this golden layered flame. Otherwise, it was shameful if he had a treasure and could not use it. The changes to Zuomo's body were not just limited to the golden layered flame. If he did not see it with his own eyes, Zuomo would not believe that this body was his. Bones like crystal, the blood vessels that all glowed, and the patterns on them could be clearly seen. The blood inside the vessels was bright and fresh, filled with vitality and shining with a faint golden light. They circulated extremely slowly. If Zuomo's consciousness was not extremely sensitive, he would have thought that the blood was unmoving. Zuomo quickly found the cause. The blood that was tinged with golden light was now much more viscous. Even the blood vessels were multiple times thicker and gave off the feeling of power. Other than the channels and blood vessels, the muscles and tendons inside Zuomo's body had completely transformed. The strong muscles had a faint gold sheen like it had been brushed with a layer of golden oil. The tendons inside his body were thinner and more slender than before, but Zuomo could feel the astonishing power contained inside. Zuomo had a strange feeling that he had become a weirdo. A weirdo that had endless strength and an inhumanly strong body. Slightly insecure, Zuomo instantly ran into the sea of consciousness. When he saw Pu Yao, he burst out, "Pu, what is with my body? Pu Yao's eyes were closed in relaxation. He said lazily, don't startle over nothing. Your great Demo physique advanced, that's all. Great Demo physique advanced. Zhuemo realized and a stone inside his heart landed. He was instantly interested. Ha! So it advanced. What are the benefits from advancing? Pu, tell me more. The corner of Pu Yao's uncovered eye imperceptibly twitched and then he drawled. An insignificant great Demo physique advancement, what else is there to say? Zhuemo instantly was discontent. He smirked. An insignificant great Demo physique advancement. If you have the skill, do this insignificant thing as well. Don't hold the bread and say you don't have food. Gu is relying on this to kill Yao and Imo. If we can't walk out of this ghastly place, can you? Pu Yao was speechless. Wei felt very good inside. Even though helping Zhuemo in secret had been an action taken out of helplessness, but now he found that this guy was truly a weirdo. He had lost a few times to Pu Yao. He had a deep experience of Pu Yao's cunning and maliciousness. Seeing Pu Yao defeated by Zhuemo, he felt great no matter how he looked at it. If he wasn't wary of Pu Yao, he wanted to clap his hands in pleasure. However, he maintained his position and pretended to not overhear Zhuemo and Pu Yao's argument. Pu Yao was one to get even. Zhuemo was unafraid, but he could not say the same. Unable to go back into the gravestone, his power was weaker than Pu Yao. Even more, Pu Yao was more cunning than him, more vicious than him, and dominated him in all aspects. Look at the time, you are still hiding things. Zhuemo was furious. Pu Yao suddenly opened his eyes. You can ask him about the great Demo physique. Wei. Zhuemo was slightly puzzled. He turned to ask Wei, you understand the great Demo physique? He suddenly nodded in realization. Right, right. You jumped out of the gravestone, you definitely understand the great Demo physique. Wei was shocked inside. He looked at Pu Yao who had closed his eyes again and was puzzled. After the gravestone had been sealed by Pu Yao, he had been forced into an agreement with Pu Yao and could not to pass Mo skills onto Zhuemo. This time, Pu Yao had actually suggested of his own initiative for Zhuemo to ask him for help with the great Demo physique. Wasn't this strange? Out of caution, he shook his head. I cannot teach you Mo skills. Why? Zhuemo stilled. His eyes widened and he suddenly showed realization. He said generously, what do you want? Name a price. Wei closed his mouth and did not speak. Pu Yao opened his eyes again and said to Wei, this guy is right. If we cannot leave this ghastly place, no one will be well off. Since his great Demo physique has advanced, it is beneficial for everyone if you teach him a bit. This does not betray your oath. Wei's bewilderment increased. Pu Yao's words were righteous and appeared reasonable, but the more it appeared so, the more Wei felt the other had a scheme. Wei pondered it momentarily inside and then made a decision. He nodded. All right. What he needed to do was not betray his oath and be able to pass Mo skills to Zhuemo. Even if Pu Yao had secret intentions, he decided to take the chance. Seeing Wei agree, Zhuemo was overjoyed. He hurriedly sat opposite Wei. Pu Yao closed his eye again. He might have been resting his mind or meditating. Wei pushed aside his stray thoughts and slowly began, the great Demo physique is an extremely rare Mo physique, extremely young and strong, unparalleled in dominance. You are familiar with the 6 transformations of the great Demo physique. Do you still remember when you had used all 6 transformations at the same time? A bit. Zhuemo nodded. It has a name, Great Mo Physique, Wei said faintly, and a strange look flashed through his eyes. Great Mo Physique. The Great Mo Physique is the sign that Amo Physique has reached maturation, but this situation is very strange. Wei said in a deep voice, "You are not a pure MO theoretically, the possibility of achieving great MO physique is very low, but you managed to do it. Even now, I do not understand the cause of this. Would there be any danger?" Suemo hurried to ask. The great Daimo physique did have great power, but if he lost his life in trade for this, then it was not profitable. "There is no danger," Wei said with a warm smile. "For you, there are only benefits and no harmful effects. You should have found the changes in your body. Those are traits unique to your great MO physique. Your body right now is a body that cannot be unbroken. The flying swords controlled by Ningmai Xiuzhe cannot harm you. The Diana Xiu have similar techniques that create a body that cannot be damaged. Other than a few traits, there is no basic difference." Suemo listened extremely carefully. Wei's understanding of the MO physique seemed to be deeper than Pu Yao. The layered flame inside your body is called the Great Day Banded Flame. It is a kind of 6th grade fire seed. Very few Mo that cultivate the Great Day MO physique can form the Great Day Banded Flame. This must be related to the Xiuzhe spells you cultivated before. Wei said humbly, "The Great Day MO physique is very rarely seen. I do not know much about it and can only use some of what I know for you as reference." The Great Day Banded Flame was actually a 6th grade fire seed. In this moment, Suemo felt so happy he could faint. 6th grade fire seed. This meant that his forging and dan-making would increase by 2 levels. Suemo wore a stupid smile. Wei saw Suemo's expression and couldn't help but grin. He did not hurry Suemo along, and waited for Suemo to come out of his daze. When Suemo's gaze became clear again, he continued, "After using the 6 changes of the Great Day MO physique to form the Great MO physique, it can open the deep MO levels. How is it different?" Wei smiled and then said seriously, "The 6 changes of the deep MO levels dramatically increase in power. Only then will you truly have the power to equal the top Jindan Xiuzhe." With an outstanding appearance, a humble presence, a serious expression, the cross-legged Wei was like the most devout preacher. "How do you open the deep MO layer's 6 transformations?" Suemo asked. "Comprehension. How do I gain comprehension?" "Very sorry, I do not know that either." Wei shook his head with a slight smile. "Let me tell you of an example of someone that comprehend the deep MO level. Maybe this will give you some help." The deep pupils lit up with the sheen of remembrance, the handsome face filled with reminisce. "My previous master's MO physique when entering the kernel stage was called Serene Python. It cannot compare to your Great Day MO physique. The Serene Python is a MO physique famed for its strength, and it only has 3 transformations." Wei's tone was deep and carried an inexplicable charisma as he narrated. She was 14 when she reached the great MO physique of the Serene Python. Wei raised his head to see the shock on Suemo's face and smiled. He then said, however, it was only when she was 17 that she opened the deep MO layer of the 3 Serene Python changes. In these 3 years, she journeyed through 9 MOGs. Suemo was stunned. He murmured, 9, he could not imagine traveling over 9 MOGs. Even if they were little Jia like Sky Moon Jia, it wasn't just a matter of 1 or 2 months to cross one of them. Suemo felt that he had gone many places, but compared to this person, it was an embarrassing comparison. Even more, at 14. She fought 427 times, killed 59 MO, wounded another 30, and was wounded 24 times. Suemo froze in shock. Chapter 392, Making a Wish. What deep MO level, go to hell. This was the only thing Suemo thought after hearing Wei speak of his previous master. If he really followed what Wei suggested, Suemo guessed that the only person among his compatriots that could accomplish this would be Wei Xingxixiao. Other people, including him, definitely could not realize it. Since it was an insurmountable task, then there was no need to trouble himself over it. This was Zhuo Mo's usual style. Compared to the unreliable deep MO level, it was more important to find news regarding the Battle of Sealed Extinction. Due to his lack of wealth in the past, he had delayed going to the second prison. Now that he had money, this matter had to progress quickly. Thinking about it, Zhuo Mo entered the wasteland beast chessboard again. This time, he did not go to find Nan Yu and Xianxia, and went alone into the second prison. Wang Lin's grievous injury had just healed and he needed to recover. Xianxia and Nan Yu had to go through the test of the prison battlefield before they could enter the second prison. Zhuo Mo, due to finishing the prison-breaking battle, had already received the qualifications to enter the second prison. The second prison was called Dance of Falling Maples. Endless mountain ranges, and large groves of fire-red maple trees extended endlessly into the distance. When a gentle wind blew past, the woods would creak, and fire-red maple leaves would be caught up in the wind and leave their branches. In that time, the maple leaves would be like red pixies that danced in the wind. Even the clouds in the sky would be slightly tinged with red. The scenery in front of him was as bright as fire, but Zhuo Mo felt an unspeakable feeling of sorrow and desolation in his chest. Zhuo Mo looked dazedly at the maple leaves floating in the wind. Was it that his calm had decreased after his consciousness was wounded? Zhuo Mo focused and mocked himself. He walked forward. Nan Yu looked with determination at the prison battlefield in front of her. Suddenly, Xianxia's laugh came from behind her. Yu has also come here. Nan Yu turned around and couldn't help but be surprised. Today, Xianxia seemed to be completely different than usual. Battle intent exuded faintly from his body, and his steps were determined. She instantly understood. Zhang de Ge is also planning on today. Yes, I can't fall too much behind you, Xianxia said with an open laugh. Nan Yu had slightly mirth on her face, the competitiveness in her eyes rising. Then let's see who succeed first. All right. See you in the second prison. See you in the second prison. The two figures charged into the prison battlefield at the same time. The Maple Leaf Market was the Yao city of the second prison and also one of the largest cities of the Ten-Finger Prison. Usually, most Yao that entered the second prison were Yao that had successfully achieved planting of the spirit. Those who were successfully managed to rise above the lowest classes of Little Yao and Ghost Attendant Yao. The Yao of this stage were called Night Stalk Yao. The Yao that just ignited their star fire were called Little Yao, those Yao that completed transformation were called Ghost Attendant Yao, and those that successfully planted their spirit were Night Stalk Yao. Night Stalk Yao was the true fundamental level of the Yao world. The local core's lowest requirement was Ghost Attendant Yao, but the true backbone of these core were the Night Stalk Yao. A core commanded directly by the Council of Elders were at minimum Night Stalk Yao. Zhuo Mo could clearly feel that the Yao that passed by were much stronger than the wasteland beast chessboard as he had expected. Night Stalk Yao were equivalent to Ningmai Xiuzhe. However, due to how cultivating Yao arts meant communicating with the world, the presence exuded by Night Stalk Yao was stronger than Ningmai Xiuzhe. Many Night Stalk Yao that successfully planted their spirit were unable to gather and conceal their power. All kinds of flowing rings of light would appear in the surroundings. Along the way, Zhuo Mo saw many strange and weird rings of light. Some were bright green, others fire red, some were shaped like a sickle while others had teeth or were crescents. It broadened his visions. These moving rings of light were related to the Yao arts they cultivated. Night Stalk Yao that just entered the spirit planting stage were unable to completely control their consciousness. A portion of the consciousness that leaked out would naturally form the Yao art they cultivated and produce stray rings of light. Yao who had good eyes were even able to judge the attribute of the Yao art from the rings of light. Those Night Stalk Yao that did not have rings of light were actually stronger. But no matter if they had a light ring or not, any Yao coming that saw Zhuo Mo's face clearly would pale and then hurriedly jumped to the side. One's name was like the shadow of a tree. With the name of Xiao Mo Gu, Zhuemo was a young expert that was known through the Yao world, especially after he had killed 26 Yao successively. It had given him a reputation of brutality and no one dared to cause trouble for him. Anywhere he passed, the crowds of Yao avoided him. But a problem also came along. Zhuemo was planning to ask for directions. Before he could speak, the other would turn and run as though their butts were on fire. A few ran even faster when they heard Zhuemo speak, hating that their parents hadn't given birth to them with 2 more legs. Zhuemo could only grimace. After a lot of effort, he finally learned the position of the Maple Leaf Market. After a few rounds at the Maple Leaf Market, he was slightly disappointed. As expected, this place was still quite low level. The things sold and the contents of those bounties were also low level. No wonder Wang Lin suggested for him to go to the 3rd prison. He was doubtful if he could find information on the Battle of Sealed Extinction at the 3rd prison. A short while later, there were many Yao surrounding him. They looked at Zhuemo with respect and awe and occasionally disgust. However, no one came over, clearly wary of Xiao Moge's reputation as a butcher. Zhuemo shook his head. After asking for directions to the prison battlefield, he left. Everything Zhuemo passed was extremely novel and unfamiliar, but Zhuemo wasn't in the mood at this time. The Sealed Extinction battlefield was like a heavy rock weighing on his heart. Right now, they seemed to have it easier, but Zhuemo knew if it dragged on, their situation would become even more precarious. The prison battlefield of the Dance of Falling Maples was a stand of beautiful and enchanting maple trees. Zhuemo did not stop and unhesitatingly stepped into it. Zhong Ru's complexion was red gold, his lips slightly curved upward as though in a smile, his right hand seemed to be holding a flower as he sat with his legs crossed. His entire body seemed to be made from copper, a dignified and grave presence filling the entire room. A long while later, he slowly opened his eyes. Gold light flashed through his eyes, and the spell on his fingers disappeared. The dignified and grave presence around him instantly disappeared. An uncontrollable look of joy floated in Zhong Ru's pupils. He finally saw a great path towards Jindan. When he had received attainment golden body from Darren, even a person as composed as him was stunned where he stood. 6th grade spell. Darren had given him a 6th grade spell. And it was also a 6th grade Diana Shio spell. For some reason, his nose had become sore, and he had almost cried. No one knew the greatest reason he had chosen the path of the Diana Shio was that he lacked spells. His talent was not outstanding, and sex would not accept him based on merit. His family was also extremely poor and could not pay the tribute. No sect was willing to accept disciples like him. A Diana Shio that had wandered by had felt pity at his situation and given him Sky Wave Fist Scripture. This fist scripture was very simple and could even be called rough, but Zhong Ru was still very grateful to that Diana Shio. He knew this fist scripture was extremely rudimentary. If he wanted to progress, other than obtaining higher level spells, he could only work on his samadhi to achieve Ningmai. He used his outstanding persistence and finally reached Ningmai, even forming an abhina. Only he knew the hardship of this entire journey. However, samadhi meditation was not the solution to all. He furiously worked on his samadhi, but he quickly found that relying on just the practice of samadhi was unable to allow him to progress further. Zhong Ru had been disappointed, but he had not felt sad. He was not an ambitious person, and only worked hard on cultivation each day. But when Zhuemo handed attainment golden body to him, everything changed. His cultivation that had remained still for so long actually grew a little sliver. Such a wondrous effect, as expected of a 6th grade spell. What he had never expected was that, other than the attainment golden body, Darren also gave him the 9-turn sky soil disc. A 6th grade spell, and a 6th grade talisman. Things that he didn't even dare to dream about were now in his hands. Darren had also said, using the Vajragata as the spindle, the 9-turn sky soil disc as the wheel, he would reforge the two into a prayer wheel that would definitely be powerful. Threads of warmth rose in Zhong Ru's heart, and a smile floated at the corner of his mouth. Darren never did unprofitable business. He wanted him to sell his life for his entire life. Then, he will sell himself to Darren. His hands suddenly came together, he lowered his eyes, his features dignified. His Diana heart was calm like an old well, a determined and grave voice echoing in his mind. Zhong Ru wishes, forsaking the path to Buddhahood, to use this body as a vajra to protect Darren. His Diana heart that was calm suddenly became covered with black clouds. Wind and rain came, lightning flashed, thunder roared, and created waves that reached the sky. Zhong Ru gave a muffled grunt and his expression changed slightly. But he seemed to not detect it. He closed his eyes, his voice as determined as usual. Zhong Ru wishes, forsaking the path to Buddhahood, to use this body as a vajra to protect Darren. His body trembled fiercely, his Diana heart cracking all over and on the edge of collapsing. Zhong Ru gritted his teeth and closed his eyes, reciting his wish over and over. He seemed to be situated in a terrible storm, lightning snakes flashing above him and illuminating his determined face. He piously recited again and again the wish he gave. Boom! A strange power suddenly formed from his nearly destroyed Diana heart and quickly burrowed into his limbs and organs. Even more wondrous was that it permeated Zhong Ru's Ling power, and every bit of blood and flesh of his body. At the same time, the Ling power inside his body seemed to be awakened, and started to flow according to attainment golden body. A thread of strange power burrowed into his forehead. In the camp, everyone suddenly stopped their actions and turned to look at a corner of the camp. Everyone had shock on their faces. Core formation. Someone was entering Jin Dan. Yi Zheng, who was not far away from Zhong Ru, suddenly paled. His lips trembled and he exclaimed, "Wish power. Buddhahood abandonment death wish." How was it possible? Someone had given a death wish. Did he not know that if one gave a death wish, they could not become a Buddha anymore? Was he crazy? Chapter 393, Buddhahood Abandonment Death Wish Core Formation. Up until now, the camp had 2 Jindan in total, Wei Sheng and Xiaxan. Zhong Ru undergoing core formation was unexpected by everyone. Wei Sheng's core formation was caused by the condensation of his sword heart after killing something, and Xia Shan's core formation was an innate change due to power. Zhong Ru's talent could only be called normal. While his cultivation was not bad, but he had not accumulated power on the level that Xia Shan had. Zhong Ru, who was not the most outstanding in any area, was the third to undergo core formation. Shocked, everyone naturally spread out and raised their guard to defend against the fiendish mist that would come and disturb Zhong Ru. After seeing 2 core formations, everyone was familiar with the apparitions during core formation. In the sky above Zhong Ru's tent was an enormous shadow that was like a faint ball of mist. The mist flowed and twisted as though something was struggling inside. When everyone raised their heads to look at the enormous shadow in the air, they all expressed shock. As the mist appeared, a faint presence covered everyone's minds like a little mountain. The only ones that could keep their composure were Wei Sheng and Xia Shan. But even these two had nervous expressions. If core formation failed, the lightest consequence was injury and the degradation of cultivation, the most serious was loss of life. Roar! A sound that was like a dragon and elephant thundered through the depths of the shadows like waves. Irregular ripples formed in the air like ripples in water. Everyone guarding the surroundings felt their ears ring as though something had exploded by their ears. Those with deep cultivation wavered, and those that were of lower cultivation paled and took multiple steps back. Only at this time did a hard wave of wind reach everyone. Wish power. A Buddhahood abandonment death wish. How long has it been since I've seen such pure and extreme wish power? In Wei's deep pupils, there seemed to be something flashing. Pu Yao looked at the continuously changing mist in the sky, as a hint of trepidation flashed through his mind. Wish power. A taste that he had almost forgotten. But when it appeared again, that familiar trepidation once again appeared. In that great war 3,000 years ago, he had fought against many Diana Shio. Of course, there were Diana Shio that possessed wish power. Diana Shio that possessed wish power were enemies that all Yao did not want to encounter. It didn't matter if it was Yao arts or Mo skills, there were many malicious and evil techniques he could think of, but if Pu Yao had to pick out the 10 most malicious powers, wish power was definitely among them. Wish power did not have any connection with the cultivation level of the Diana Shio. It was a power that could permeate all kinds of Ling power. It was only connected with the wish inside the heart of the wisher. The more determined the wisher's belief was, the stronger the wish power was. In the legends, if the Diana Shio who made a wish could complete the oath they gave, they could become a Buddha. The strongest belief of every Diana Shio was to become a Buddha. A death wish was a wish that could not be completed. Buddhahood abandonment death wish, was when the Diana Shio made the cruelest and harshest oath, and because of this, of all the kinds of wish power, Buddhahood abandonment death wish was the most extreme wish power. No one wanted to be enemies that had made a Buddhahood abandonment death wish. If one touched this terrifying wish power, it would directly damage their soul, and this damage was almost irreparable. It was a synonym for death. Luckily, not every Diana Shio could make wishes. Otherwise, the great battle in the past would not have lasted for long. In reality, it was rare to find Diana Shio that could receive wish power, and of those the Diana Shio that could make a Buddhahood abandonment death wish, even Pu Yao hadn't seen more than 5. But they actually encountered one here. Pu Yao and Wei were frightened. Of the entire campsite, in terms of who was most shocked, it would undoubtedly be Yi Zheng. Coming from the great Buddha temple, Yi Zheng was from an orthodox and famed sect. But at this time, he was gaping as he looked at the sky, his entire mind a mess. Dropped into this ghastly place, what he had seen in these short months had completely upset everything he had learned on the mountain. When he had seen Wei Xing the first time, he was awed by the other's talent and felt that he, in comparison, had achieved nothing. However, he never would have thought that it was just the beginning. Everything that followed was so fantastical it was like a dream. A guy who was of similar age to him was the leader of thousands of people, and everyone was strangely loyal. In a place called Golden Crow Camp, everyone had a 4th grade Golden Crow fire seed. He had almost gone insane then. Could that fire seed be made wholesale? In a place called Vermilion Bird Camp, everyone there were battle maniacs. Even their gaze when they walked by were like blades. Yi Zheng was a greenhorn. He did not know how strong these people were, but the presence exuded by these people made his heart beat wildly. A place called Guard Camp had its doors locked all day. However, there would occasionally be the sounds of howling like wild beasts and battle coming from inside. Every time he passed by, he would uncontrollably shake. There was one that rested all day hugging the sword, one that held a black spear and killed all day without any weariness, little people that could fly, and mischievous pagoda. All kinds of weird, strange, and impossible things were found here. We are from Great Buddha Temple, we are Diana Shio, we won't compete with you on strangeness, Yi Zheng repeatedly comforted himself in multiple nights. But today, he saw with his own eyes a Diana Shio's core formation, saw a Diana Shio give a wish, saw a Diana Shio give a Buddhahood abandonment death wish, and consequently, he completely broke down. Who is the Diana Shio here? Great Buddha Temple, one of the 10 Diana Shio holy grounds. He knew of 3 that had wish power, the Shirshu from the Discipline Hall, the ancestral forefather, and 7th Shirgu. Buddhahood abandonment death wish, oh, the stuff of legends, it's good to hear about it. But why did it have to appear in front of him? Yi Zheng suddenly felt that the glittering sigh of the great Buddha temple was still dazzling in front of this unorthodox Diana Shio, but for some unknown reason, its presence had lessened greatly. All hail the Buddha! Yizheng grabbed his head with his hands and looked dazedly at the dark shadow gradually forming in the sky. A blurry shadow gradually formed above the camp. The enormous slave transporting boats in the face of this figure's foot was like a toe. The shadow was like an ancient giant looking down at the world. Everyone in the camp without exception inhaled sharply. An endless presence came at them like a tsunami. Wei Xing showed a grave expression. He stepped forward, and gestured in a circle and swiped with his fingers. Everyone felt the presence oppressing their bodies instantly lessen and their terror-filled expressions eased slightly. Wei Xing and Xia Shan exchanged a look. Both had grave expressions. The two of them had detected the unusualness of Zone Ru's core formation. Moo! The blurry giant suddenly raised its head and bellowed. The sound traveled far in all directions. Waves of motion came from the depths of the fiendish mist. The giant's blurry figure continued to change. Zhuemo, who was going through the dance of falling maples prison battlefield, did not know of the enormous noise at the campground. This time, he did not activate the prison-breaking battle and he sighed in relief. If he activated the prison-breaking battle again, then he would want to smash his head of a wall. He thought of how much endless trouble breaking vast water-clear skies had been. With money in his hand, Zhuemo did not want trouble. These things might also be money, but they were not as likable as Jingshi. In any case, Ji couldn't waste it. The prison battlefield of the Dance of Falling Maple was primarily based on killing illusions. Zhuemo felt good after using bone-crushing obscuring wind. Powerful Yao arts only worked if they were used frequently. Zhuemo clearly detected that he could use bone-crushing obscuring wind now. Zhuemo quickly was not satisfied with purely using bone-crushing obscuring wind. He started to try to change Yao arts. Suddenly thinking of the feeling he caught at the last moment in the battle against Imo Ruhua. Zhuemo's eyes suddenly lit up. The door created by blue and green vines twined together released a serene light. This was a Yao door. The Xiuzha had their transportation formations, the Yao had their Yao doors, the Mo had their blood pools. They were going home. Looking at the Yao door, Mu Shi's thoughts flowed. She couldn't say how she felt after being able to safely return home after fighting for several years. Before this campaign, she had never left home for so long. Thinking about how her mother had cried until she was made of tears when she had been preparing, her heart felt sore. Returning in victory, this was the only part she felt was worth it. From a young age, her talent was not very eye-catching among the youths of the clan. It was only when she began to study being a battle general that her talent was seen. It had been unexpected that the chance to represent the Wood clan had landed on her head. The clan leader's order had created many doubting voices. It had to be known that of all military commanders, she was the youngest. Fortunately, she had not failed. Even though there were no great achievements, there were not any failures. "Let's go," she said serenely. Just at this time, a Yao that was wearing the military uniform hurried past. Mu Shi recognized this Yao. The other was an intermediate-level battle general at the front line of the Bloody Sky metropolis Jia. Mu Shi had once met him. The other's expression was panicked and had slight terror. Mu Shi's heart suddenly jumped. "Mang Zong Darren," she called the other. Mang Zhang's steps paused. He finally saw Mu Shi like he had woken up from a dream. "It's Mu Shi Darren." To any battle general, the skill to remain calm was the most fundamental of all fundamentals. Seeing the other so uncomposed, the bad feeling inside grew. She asked in a light voice, "Has something happened?" Zong Mang's expression changed. His eyes suddenly became slightly red, his voice hoarse. The front lines were defeated. Ah! Mu Shi and her vice-commander's expression changed dramatically. 3 days ago, small numbers of Xiuzha appeared on the outskirts of the defensive line. We sent out little teams to clean out the area. We quickly received news that the teams were surrounded and were asking for aid. Yan Shangdaran led the troops to give aid. But the other took the chance to attack the defense line. The attack was strong. Yan Shangdaran was ambushed on the way back to give aid. The fierce fire corps were completely killed. Yan Daran has also given his life in sacrifice. The troops that went to give aid to Yan Shangdaran were also ambushed and lost great numbers. Mang Zhan's voice was sorrowful. Mu Shi's face suddenly became as white as paper. Chapter 394, Speculation. When the news of the defeat at the front line reached the rear, all were shocked. This was the first defeat the Yao had suffered after the war began. The losses were so severe they surpassed imagination. In the previous battles, the Yao military forces had advanced smoothly. The Xianxia hadn't just retreated out of bloody sky metropolis Jia, they had also lost multiple Jia. But looking at it with a calm eye now, the Xianxia had not been truly wounded at all. What they had lost were just the lowest level of sects, and the true elite had not suffered losses at all. In this defeat, the Yao casualties were all combat Yao above the stage of spirit planting. Normal Yao and combat Yao were spirit planting stage, but there was an enormous difference in ability. This was not as evident when it was a small skirmish, but the difference would certainly show in mass combat. Even if it was the local militia, they needed to training for at least 5 years to form preliminary combat abilities. Even more, Fierce Fire Corps was a regular corps commanded directly by the Council of Elders. None one had expected the Xianxia's counterattack was so ferocious and decisive. When they attacked, it was like thunder. When the situation at the front lines were good, the mood at the rear was very relaxed, but with the news of the defeat the mood of the rear instantly became tense. The Fierce Fire Corps of Yan Shangdaran were famed for their ferocity. They were completely defeated. Then how strong was the power of the enemy? The Yao finally remembered that the Xianxia had possessed bloody sky metropolis Jia for 3,000 years. 3,000 years, even if bloody sky metropolis Jia was not suited for Xianxia to fight, they would still be as familiar with that place like it was their backyard. The light on his hand flashed continuously, Zhua Mo was very careful. Pia, the light disappeared. Zhua Mo shook his head. It still didn't work. He tried to recall the feeling he captured with the tactile knowledge grip that day, and seemed to comprehend something but he could not describe it. He knew this was due to not having a deep enough understanding. That barely discernible understanding needed more accumulation. It seemed that he needed to go find Little Red soon. The pitiful Mo Ruhua was a pretty famous character, but due to his completely red body, Zhua Mo intimately called him Little Red. If he heard this nickname, he would probably go insane immediately. He had been planning to use the prison battlefield to practice his Yao arts. Now that he did not have any ideas, Zhua Mo did not decide to procrastinate any further. As long as he did not activate the prison breaking battle, passing through was still pretty easy for him. He quickly received the qualification to enter the third prison. He thought, he had spent enough time in the 10-finger prison today. His consciousness swept across the spiritual imprint. He found that Zhangzhe and Nanyu were both present and headed to the wasteland beast chessboard. When Zhua Mo found Zhangzhe and Nanyu, he found the two were dejected and had worried expressions. What is it? Zhua Mo asked in puzzlement, has something happened? Zhangzhe narrated the news of the loss at the front lines in a low voice. At the side, Nanyu showed worry. They lived in the Yao world. If the Yao army were defeated, their lives would become even worse. They had just seen hope. If the Yao world became destabilized, would anyone remain unaffected? After Zhangzhe finished, Zhua Mo was stunned where he stood, with only shock left inside. After a long time, he came back. His first response was, how was it possible? He had personally seen the great strength of the Yao army. Sky Moon Jia, Little Mountain Jia, when hadn't the Xianxia retreated continually? Those large sects retreated when they heard of the advance of the Yao army and ran back to Bright Wave Jia like homeless dogs. After that, Zhuemo had lost complete confidence in Kunlun. Even the present Vermilion Bird Camp and Guard Camp in Zhuemo's eyes could not compare to the elite forces of the Yao army. Now he was hearing Zhang say that the Yao army had been defeated by the Shuzhe. The Yao military that was so powerful was actually defeated. And defeated right in front of their own doorstep. When he heard that the total death count reached 12,000, Zhuemo didn't know what to say. So the Shuzhe had powerful people too. He still didn't believe it, but he knew that Zhang and Nanyu definitely would not try to con him. Such a dazzling victory completely upended Zhuemo's impression of the fragility of those great sections. He suddenly realized the depths of those great sects were not as he had thought. But he couldn't help but have a strange feeling. The past week display of the Shuzhe was a stark contrast against this great victory. The two were so different, they were like mud and clouds. Was it? Zhuemo's eyes suddenly widened. His body froze and a wave of coldness rose from his spine. Pretend to be weak. The 4 words tore his mind like lightning. His expression changed. With multiple jia of territory, countless sects as the bait, it was insane. His mind blanked as he mindlessly murmured. If it really was so, then the one who planned this was a madman. An undoubted madman. Zhuemo soullessly returned to the camp. The gray mist in the sky continuously retreated back towards the center. The figure of the giant continuously shrunk and became clearer. When it completely appeared, simultaneous inhales sounded in the camp again. An extremely weird giant floated in the sky. 20 zhang high like a little mountain. It had 3 heads that faced 3 directions, each with a different expression. There was one glaring angrily, one smiling slightly, and one with eyes closed in deep thought. The 6 arms were either making seals, or the pair of hands were together. Endless dignity was like an invisible wave that struck everyone's minds. Staring at the colossal being in the sky, Yi Zheng's face was as pale as paper, his pupils scattered as he unconsciously murmured. Dragon and elephant attainment. When Zhuemo returned to the camp, Zhong Ru's core formation was in its ending stages. He looked towards where Zhong Ru was. He was first shocked and then he showed joy. However, this thread of joy was quickly shrouded by thick darkness. His face became extremely dark and he called everyone to his tent. The mood inside the camp was extremely low. Everyone had terrible expressions. The news that Zhuemo had brought from the 10-finger prison was a shock and everyone was silent. We are bait. Gongsun Cha narrowed his eyes as his finger gently swiped across his face. His bashful and shy face was completely frosty at this time. If this really is their plan, then they definitely have successive plans, Gongsun Cha continued to speak. His voice was cold like the collision of ice cups. His autumn-like pupils were filled with murderousness. A person who is able to make such a scheme definitely would not just aim for this kind of small victory. Damn it! Xia Shan bellowed, his eyes sprouting fire and his features twisted. The other Shuzhe who came out of Little Mountain Jia had completely red eyes. Not even 1 out 10 Shuzhe had managed to survive Little Mountain Jia. No one experienced more than they did. Every one of them had crawling out of piles of corpses. No one doubted Gongsun Cha's speculation. Sword essence flowed in Wei Xing's black eyes and his expression was black. He had felt things were strange when he had accompanied Lin Qian and his group to the Sword Cave. Every one of Lin Qian's bodyguards had exceptional power. With that kind of strength, why did they not defend Sky Moon Jie? It seemed more like they had given Sky Moon Jie to the Yao army. With the comparison now, he understood. A strong fury and dislike instantly filled his chest. The sword essence in his body felt it and roiled as it wanted to burst out of his body. Kunlun governed the entire Kunlun territory. Every sect needed to pay taxes to Kunlun. A portion of their income had to flow towards Kunlun, turn to Jingshi, turn to materials for Kunlun disciples to cultivate, for Kunlun to use for daily expenditures. But killing essence flowed through the tent and the mood was extremely low. Zhuo, who had been silent all this time, suddenly raised his face. As though nothing had happened, he gave a bright smile. Everyone, cultivate. If they really did this, there naturally will be chances to slowly settle our debts with them. Faster, faster. Accelerate. We must reach the defensive line within 48 hours. Every Yao soldier had tired expressions. They had received orders. In order to rush to Bloody Sky Metropolis Jia as fast as possible, they had almost used all their power. General, we will reach Bloody Sky Metropolis Jia soon. As the corps commander of Ice Frost Crops, Lon was in his prime. 20 years ago, he had become a golden battle general. The 20 years of experience of commanding a troop had caused him to show hints of making a breakthrough. As one of the most influential people of the Water Clan, everyone speculated that he would have a good future. Lon had a cautious personality. His battle style was steady and he rarely made mistakes. The reason that the Elder Council sent him was in hopes that he could quickly stabilize the theater of war and prevent the collapse of the defensive line. Looking at the bloody mist that was endless in front of him, Lon was silent. The troops streamed past him and entered the bloody mist. His vice-commander silently stood next to him and did not disturb him. Do you know the origins of the Bloody Sky Metropolis Jie? Lon asked. The vice-commander respectfully said, 3,000 years ago, we were defeated. In order to halt the advance of the Xiuzha, the 4 major Jia masters used their fleshly bodies in sacrifice, with 7 intermediate Jia as the axle, 49 little Jia as the screen, to create what is called Bloody Sky Metropolis Jia. Lon said emotionally, yes, born of our elders' blood and flesh. I hope they can protect us to safely return. The vice-commander said in shock, does Darren have such a low outlook on our mission this time? The other definitely has more plans. Lon shook his head. The complete defeat of the Fierce Fire Corps is not an accident. The destruction of a corps is at least an intermediate-scale battle. If they did not put in enough power, the other could not have completely killed the Fierce Fire Corps. The vice-commander couldn't help but have a worried expression. He had followed his commander for many years. Darren would never speculate. Noticing the vice-commander's expression, Lon said with a smile, don't be nervous. We will use earth to deal with water, generals to deal with soldiers. We just have to be more careful. This subordinate thinks too much, the vice-commander hurriedly replied. Being more cautious is good. Lon was silent for a moment before he suddenly raised his head. A light flashed through his pupils. Order. Collectively accelerate. We need to reach the defensive line in 24 hours. The vice-commander apprehensively responded, yes. Chapter 395, Gold Battle General Zhong Ru opened his eyes. The chaotic air turbulence around him instantly stopped and a glowing light flashed and disappeared in his eyes. The skin on his face became extremely smooth, the weathering due to hard days in his past had disappeared. His appearance was not handsome and not exceptional in the campsite, but the Diana's serene aura on his body was unique to him. It had to be said that the people of the camp were very unique. Wei Xing's determination, Gong Sun Cha's insanity and viciousness hidden under bashfulness, Shu Long's steadiness, Ma Fan's laziness, etc. On Zhong Ru's clean forehead was a blood-red lotus. 2 auras, one holy and one demonic, were merged together, and filled with a soul-shaking power. He stood and slowly walked out of the tent. Old Ru. Seeing Zhong Ru, Lei Peng and Nian Lu first stopped and then were overjoyed. The 3 of them had once been in a team and had a good relationship. While Zhong Ru had undergone his corps formation, the 2 of them had stood guard outside the tent. Lei Man. Little Nian Nian. A sincere smile came onto Zhong Ru's face. Nian Lu's smile froze on his face, and the tendons in his forehead pulsed. Lei Peng laughed instead, and rushed in front of Zhong Ru, opening his eyes and giving a hard hug. "Old Ru, you did it. Secretly having your core formation. Isn't this forcing the rest of us to work hard?" Lei Peng's voice was like thunder and exploded next to Zhong Ru's ear. Zhong Ru had a slight smile as he patted Lei Peng's back. Nian Lu's gaze swept across Zhong Ru and landed on Zhong Ru's face. His eyes suddenly lit up. "So core formation can make one more handsome. Excellent. No, I have to enter Jindan soon. I'm so handsome now. If I'm a Jindan, how handsome would I be?" It is such a hard question. Hearing Nian Lu's narcissistic and nonsensical words, Zhong Ru's heart felt unspeakably warm. The news that Zhong Ru had come out made the entire camp erupt. The mood of the camp had been extremely heavy these past days. Zhong Ru's reappearance caused everyone to be filled with joy. Zhong Ru was humble and low-key usually. In this time, the people that came to congratulate him was endless. Compared to everyone's worry when Xia Shan had his core formation, everyone was extremely calm this time. When Zhong Ru saw Zhua Mo and the others, he hurriedly walked forward. He made a deep bow and said respectfully, "Darren." A smile came onto Zhua Mo's face and he unhesitatingly went forward to give Zhong Ru a hard hug. Just as Zhong Ru was very moved, Darren muttered in a small voice next to his ear, "You have to work hard on the healing techniques of Attainment Golden Body. There is so many people in the camp, think how much Jingxia we can save when the time comes, Darren, we cannot sustain this." The vice commander's expression was fragile and his voice bitter and burdened. Lan's face was unaffected. "How many have we lost?" "Another 200 were just killed, 300 wounded." The vice commander had a terrible expression when he reported the numbers. In the short 8 hours since they stepped into the bloody sky metropolis Jia, they had encountered 6 waves of attack. Up until now, fatalities reached more than 1,000 people, more than 1/10 of the entire corps. The others' attacks were extremely fierce and unpredictable. They seemed to be able to move without restriction in bloody sky metropolis Jia. No one knew how they were able to do this. The blood sky metropolis Jia was the battlefield suited for Yama, yet they were suppressed in this place. But the Xiuzha who attacked them seemed to be unaffected at all and were at great ease. How was the other able to do this? Lon gazed into the distance and asked, "How long until we can reach the defensive line?" "The others' attacks have slowed our advancement," Lon interrupted the vice commander and asked sternly, "How long?" The vice commander's heart shook. He gritted his teeth and said, "At this speed, we will only reach the line after 96 hours. Lon was silent for a moment before he said in a deep voice, "Gather the other Darren." "Yes." The vice commander heeded the order. Moments later, the 9 officers hurried over. Their expressions were all bad. In 8 short hours, 1/10 of their forces had been killed. This kind of attrition rate made their hearts beat rapidly. Based on this speed, their numbers would be expended before they reached the defensive line. Lan's gaze swept across the 9 officers. Their faces were terrible but not panicked. He had personally promoted all 9 commanders who had outstanding skills. Military positions had very strict requirements. For a regular corps like the Ice Frost Corps, the corps commander must be a gold battle general, and the officers had to be silver battle generals. "I need one that is willing to go to his death." Lon did not waste words and directly said it. The 9 officers all changed expressions. From Darren's words, they could surmise the state of the situation. Darren's gaze made them feel there was a blade at their back. But they hesitated. At this time, a youth stood out. "Darren, this subordinate is willing." Lan's expressionless face imperceptibly twitched. He looked closely at the youth and his heart couldn't help but hurt. This youth that had become a silver battle general at the age of 20 had a limitless potential and one of his favorite commanders. Liang Wei belonged to one of the side branches of the Water clan. His results in the Yao art house had been average until he had turned to study as a battle general, where his results shot up. When he was 20, he had successfully passed the exam of a silver battle general. Even though he was not eye-catching compared to the little monsters of the Yao world, Lan still felt that his future was limitless. Liang Wei stood upright, full of bravery. Lan could not refuse at this time. He nodded. I will give you 3,000 combat Yao. Take up the rear, sweep the flanks of the troop, and stop the attacks. The other officers had complex expressions. From the harassment they had endured in the last 8 hours, they could predict just how great the pressure Liang Wei would face. Liang Wei calmly accepted and made a bow towards Lan. If I die in combat, Darren, please give some care to my clansmen. I will. Lan gravely replied. He turned to the other officers and said in a deep voice, proceed at full speed. Military law for those that slow down. Yes. The officers all shook. Wei gazed at the development of the battle situation. He felt great shock at the combat capabilities that Gongsun Cha showed. The battle had been at a standstill for 2 whole days. Wei saw a rare seriousness on Pu Yao's face. After interacting for several thousand years, no one could rival his understanding of Pu Yao. When his previous owner had been the corps commander, all of the strategic decisions had come from Pu Yao. Pu Yao was forced to such a state by such a young guy. If he didn't see it with his own eyes, he definitely would not believe it. From the start of this war chess match, he had watched as the two fought without a moment of inattention. He had sighed in amazement many times throughout. The eye-dazzling fighting had caused him to exclaim. The time rate of war chess was much faster than regular time. The span of 2 days was equivalent to a whole month inside the match. He did not understand battle generals. At every dangerous moment, his heart couldn't help but jump. He had thought hundreds of times inside, how could they be so devious? Even though the advantage of the match was in Pu Yao's hands, but Wei put more of his attention of Gongsun Cha. Such a young person that was able to resist Pu Yao for so long, his skill definitely was not low. Gradually, the balance began to tilt and the Pu Yao's advantage had grown. Pu Yao's sweeping attacks in the final stages of battle were, in Wei's view, this guy venting for having lost face. As expected, when Pu Yao came out of the war chess, his expression was not good. A very powerful young person. Wei's words were slightly pouring salt onto the wound. Pu Yao's expression became even uglier, but he seemed to think of something and his expression instantly recovered. He said proudly, don't give young people too much praise. This is not good for his improvement. Wei stilled. He reacted very quickly. He is my student. Pu Yao showed a smug and sly smile. How about it? Give a review. Wei really was stunned this time. He is also your student. What about Suemo? Why can't I have 2 students? Pu Yao glanced at Wei, his tone filled with smugness and showiness. I have good eyes for judging people. Strong. Wei's praise seemed sincere. Of course. Pu Yao was even more smug. Nothing needs to be said of Suemo, that guy is a weirdo that even I don't understand. Gongsun Cha is born to be a battle general. Ha, a 20-year-old gold battle general, he'll frighten those old guys to death. Gold battle general. Wei was frightened. He stammered out, that little guy is a gold battle general. Wei's display made Pu Yao's smugness reach a peak. His devious and cunning face seemed to glow at this moment. Definitely a gold battle general. I jumped in fright this time when he attacked. If I wasn't careful, I would have lost. TSK, a scripture he comprehended himself, 20-year-old gold battle general. As expected of one that I taught from the beginning. Most importantly, Pu Yao suddenly closed his mouth and did not speak. Wei unconsciously asked, "What is it?" Ha 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 ha. He didn't not just inherit my skills as a battle general, but also my handsome appearance. On this point, Suemo lacks a lot. Wei looked wordlessly at Pu Yao. Gong Sun Cha's mood was terrible to the bone. He had originally thought that after just having a breakthrough, he could rival the mystery person. Who knew that he had lost again? Even though he knew he could not rival the other, but he disliked failure, extremely disliked it. After swallowing the fiend's soul beast bead, he had just reached the border of a breakthrough. Just at this time, Suemo had given him a golden soul and successfully allowed him to make a breakthrough. The strong confidence brought by the breakthrough caused him to unhesitatingly challenge Pu Yao. But it still ended in defeat. Thinking about how he had never beat the other once, his mood became even worse. The speculation about being bait made him even angrier. With his understanding of Xixiang, even though Xixiang had said it easily that day, he definitely would not give up inside. They would get even. As the battle general, he would undoubtedly play the most crucial part. He could not fail. Craziness flashed through Gong Sun Cha's eyes. A daring and insane idea quickly formed in his mind. We need to cultivate and get even. As a handsome person, I cannot swallow this breath. Lei Ping showed an understanding and devious smile. Don't worry. Darren has said that he will take us and settle the odds. I'm telling you in secret. Miss Darren privately said that it probably is people from Kunlun that did this. Kunlun. Nian Lu was shocked and then furious. It is actually Kunlun. Don't worry. There's no need to worry even if it is Kunlun. Lei Peng's expression was twisted as he smiled and said, Darren said, if you have something of ours, spit it out. If you dug a trap for us, we'll dig one for you. Little Nian, go cultivate. Even old Ru is a Jin Dan. It's not easy to live if we aren't Jin Dan in the future. Everyone wants to have a core formation. Is the core that easy to form? Nian Lu murmured. Shouldn't core formations be achieved according to the degree of handsomeness? Coming out of the 10-finger prison, Suemo walked out of the camp with a fire in his chest. The Xiuzha and the camp crisscrossed around busily, but looking at this busy scene, Suemo's heart did not calm down but became even more irritated. He walked aimlessly out of the camp. Walking out of the campsite, and losing the barrier provided by the campsite formations, the fiendish mist rushed towards him. The thick fiendish energy inside the fiendish mist made his raging fire grow even greater. Nearby, there were Xiuzha from Vermilion Bird Camp that were cultivating. The fiend Ling, that they cultivated needed to use the power of the fiendish energy. Suemo did not disturb them and walked forward. At this moment, his heart was full of the impulse to destroy. Without thinking, he charged into the depths of the fiendish mist. The presence of danger increased but he did not seem to detect it, and his steps did not slow. Several fiend soul beasts silently stalked him. In the black-red fiendish mist, several dark red pairs of eerie eyes tightly locked onto Suemo. Without noticing, Suemo had walked at least 300 li from the camp. This distance far surpassed the camp's usual cultivation and living area. Even guard camp would not go outside 100 li of the camp. A fiend soul beast could not resist any longer. With a roar, he charged at Suemo. The accumulated rage and savagery inside Suemo were ignited at this moment. Go die. His eyes suddenly became red. He did not dodge. Facing the charge of the fiend soul beast, he punched out. The fiend soul beast had not expected Suemo to be so courageous and did not have the time to dodge. Bam! The two figures were like two arrows that flew apart. The fiend soul beast's enormous body flew back with even faster speed, and Suemo was like a ball hit by a stick that smashed heavily into the ground. The other fiend soul beasts saw the chance and unhesitatingly leapt over. Pia pia pia. With sounds like that of a whip, the fiend soul beasts that leapt over all flew backwards. Suo Mo's body floated up. A suit of dark golden armor stood proudly. The bright red eyes were filled with murderousness, his entire body exuding viciousness and savagery like a demon that walked out of hell. The fiend soul beasts showed wariness. They crouched down and continued to growl. Their dark red eyes stared at Suo Mo, but they did not dare to move forward. Suo Mo raised his murderous eyes, and his figure disappeared from his spot. The fiend soul beasts were alarmed and scattered. Suddenly, an armored hand appeared on the forehead of a fiend soul beast. This hand pressed it down. The fiend soul beast felt an enormous power pass over. It was unable to move. Now it became panicked. It growled urgently, its four limbs furiously tearing at the ground to try to resist this terrifying hand. Suo Mo's left hand did not move a sliver. He raised his right hand and formed a fist. Go die. Suo Mo bellowed. Brutality increased in his completely red eyes. The right hand heavily smashed onto the head of the fiend soul beast. Bam! The fiend soul beast's body froze. Go die. Bam! Go die. Bam! The berserk Suo Mo bellowed as his fist rained down on the head of the fiend soul beast. Gradually, the body of this fiend soul beast became blurry. Bam! Suo Mo's fist penetrated the head of the fiend soul beast and struck the ground. It instantly smashed a large hole in the ground. The body of the fiend soul beast completely disappeared, leaving behind a black fang and a fiend soul beast bead. The seemingly insane Suo Mo made the other fiend soul beasts feel a threat of terror. While this fiend soul beast was smashed to nothingness by Suo Mo, they did not dare to go forward. Suo Mo did not look at his spoils of victory. He raised his head and slowly stood. His gaze swept towards the other fiend soul beasts. The fiend soul beasts that encountered his gaze all retreated without exception. You should all die. The dark and icy voice came out of Suo Mo's chest. Before his words landed, his figure disappeared again. The fiend soul beasts were alarmed and scattered, fleeing in all directions. Suo Mo's figure seemed to appear out of thin air beside a fiend soul beast. Just like the previous one, his hand grabbed the head of this fiend soul beast. He hadn't expected this fiend soul beast to be unusually clever. Its figure changed, and it escaped Suo Mo's grip. A red light suddenly flashed across the dark red pupils of the fiend soul beast. Suo Mo suddenly felt a burst of dizziness. It was like he had entered the crevasse of a glacier. All the Ling power inside his body seemed to be frozen and he was unable to move at all. The eyes of this fiend soul beast showed smugness and cruelty. Midair, its body twisted as though it had no bones and it turned to face Suo Mo. Its body crouched and jumped without needing to gather power, and like an arrow leaving the bowstring, it leapt at Suo Mo. The cold and sharp fangs and claws swiped out cold lights in the air. The lights flashed toward Suo Mo's throat. Suddenly, a fist appeared without warning in its field of vision and dramatically enlarged. Boom! Like a large drum being struck but also with a metallic clang. This fist firmly punched the fiend soul beast without any finesse. The moment the fist and its body touched, threads of mist roiled on the surface of its body. With speed even faster than just before, it flew backwards. Bam! Midair, a golden figure flashed, and the fiendish soul beast that was retreating immediately changed directions and smashed heavily into the ground. The ground trembled and dust flew up. When the dust dissipated, there were only a few spoils of victory left in the large hole. The other fiend soul beasts showed terror. They whined a few times before turning and fleeing. They did not lack intelligence to have survived and grown up in such a cruel and harsh place. Zhuomo's surroundings instantly became silent. Gradually, the blood slowly faded from Zhuomo's eyes. The angry and savagery inside was vented, and his mind became clear. With clarity came a strong feeling of exhaustion. His legs softened and he sat down on the ground. The sweat permeated his entire body. Weakness and softness came. He panted hard. Ha, ha. His rushed breathing in his ears were like bellows. His heart gradually calmed down. Zhuomo had a grimace on his lips. It seemed that his resolve was not strong enough. Full of self-disdain, he couldn't help but think back to his journey. Without realizing it, he felt his heart was warmed. No matter how terrible the situation was, he would always have a crowd of people beside him, following him, fighting with him, risking their lives together with him. No matter how dangerous the future was, everyone was still supporting him, trusting him, following him, and protecting him. A slight smile on the corners of his mouth, his heart gradually became warm and calm. The sky full of fiendish mist in his eyes seemed to become an endless bright blue sky. A strong will silently birthed and spread inside. He balled his fists. When he raised his head again, the confusion had cleared and was replaced by strong will. After resting for a moment, Zhuomo found a terrible problem and his face instantly fell. Damn it, how was he to return? At this time, a proud bird figure slowly stalked its bird walk and appeared in his vision. Chapter 397, Totem Fragments. Even though Silly Bird's gaze was still so proud, so discontent, but in front of Zhuomo's scoundrel-like and hoodlum laugh, there was nothing to do. Zhuomo used his arms and legs to climb onto Silly Bird's back and pretended to be dead. However, Zhuomo was muttering on the inside. After Silly Bird's strength had strangely skyrocketed, her personality had become even prouder. Adding on that all the little ones listened to her, she acted as the leader of them all, and completely forgot her actual profession as a steed, much less think of him, the owner. This could not be tolerated. Education could not be relaxed. Planning on educating Silly Bird, Zhuomo was going to speak when he felt himself shoot up. His entire body was almost thrown off. With a shake, he hurriedly hugged Silly Bird's neck. When they were flying in the air, the feeling was completely different. It was like lightning. The wind blew so hard Zhuomo could not open his eyes. Such an exhilarating speed caused Zhuomo to be in a good mood. Hands tightly grabbing onto Silly Bird's slender neck, he raised his head and started to sing. I want to fly even higher, ah ah ah, the cymbal-like sound flew across the sky. Silly Bird's eyes looked back with unfriendliness and glanced maliciously at Zhuomo, who was in a world of his own. Her wings suddenly flapped and she flew straight up. Ah ah ah, Zhuomo's wail followed Silly Bird's acceleration, as they floated up. When he dismounted from Silly Bird's back, his legs were as soft as noodles. His entire person was intoxicated as though he was drunk. Before he walked a few steps, he found all the little ones had come over, nudging and crowding intimately around Silly Bird. Like the moon surrounded by stars, Silly Bird didn't even look at Zhuomo stalking her bird walk, she flounced off. That presence, that manner, it made Zhuomo gape. Suddenly recalling what Silly Bird looked like before, Zhuomo couldn't help but laugh. After shaking his head in self-mockery, he went into the tent. A Gue who was in the corner of the tent saw Zhuomo come in, and the wooden and empty pupils seemed to become slightly more livelier. A Gue, have you rested well these days? Just like usual, even though he knew that a Gue would not reply, Zhuomo spoke to her as he took out his spoils. N. When the tiny sound, that was like that of an ant, landed in Zhuomo's ears and was akin to thunder. Zhuomo's movements suddenly froze. He raised his head, and his face was filled with disbelief. The disbelief on his face rapidly turned to ecstasy. He shot in front of a Gue. A Gue. A Gue. You can speak. Agui's face was wooden, her pupils empty, and she was unresponsive to Zhuomo's words, as though the sound of response had been Zhuomo's delusion. That definitely had not been a delusion. Zhuomo's eyes were filled with joy. Even though Agui's body gradually shows signs of a good turn, but the response today was a breakthrough. Agui, can you hear me speak? Zhuomo slowed his talking speed and tried to make his tone warm. His eyes looked hard at Agui's face. It was another mosquito-sized response. It caused Zhuomo to break out in a grin. He jumped up like a child and whooped. Ha! Agui can talk. Agui can talk. A slight ripple was produced in Agui's empty pupils. After celebrating, Zhuomo inspected Agui's body. He quickly found that the purple energy inside Agui's body had grown. The purple energy inside Agui's body was the decisive change and surely had an effect in Agui's recovery. But this purple energy was extremely dark and unpredictable. Even Pu Yao did not know of its origins. Even weirder was that Zhuomo could not sense any signs of life from the purple energy. It was the extreme opposite. It was dark, varied, and filled with destructiveness, the presence of death. Theoretically, such a strange power should bring death, so how come it could make Agui recover? Even though he did not understand, Zhuomo couldn't help but ponder the purple energy. How could he increase the strength of the purple energy? This thought flashed through Zhuomo's mind. Calming down, Zhuomo suppressed the urgency inside. He had to be cautious with this matter. Agui's body was extremely delicate. Any change, and there was a possibility the body could shatter into pieces. Those two sounds of response seemed to have taken great energy from Agui. She closed her eyes and fell asleep. Seeing her state, Zhuomo hurriedly quieted down and carefully laid her down. After thinking for a long time, Zhuomo finally returned his attention to his spoils. This time, he had killed 2 fiend soul beasts, and the spoils that remained were slightly strange. It was strange, because there was something else other than the fiend soul beast bead and the remnants of limbs. It was a piece of metal about the size of a fingernail. There were some special patterns on the surface of the piece. Zhuomo felt the patterns were like seal scripts. This piece was left behind by the fiend soul beast that froze his Ling power. The composition of the metal was extremely unique. Zhuomo could not say what it was made out of and had never seen the scripts on it before. Luckily, there was an old antique from 3,000 years ago with him. Pu, do you recognize this? Pu Yao sprouted out, and grabbed the piece from Zhuomo's hand. Putting it on front of his eyes and studying it, his expression was grave as he shook his head. I can see it is something ancient. But I don't know what it actually is. Zhuomo was not shocked. If this really was the sealed extinction battlefield, it was normal to not recognize something from tens of thousands of years ago. Can I have a look? Wei suddenly spoke. Pu Yao glanced at Wei and threw the fragment in his hand over. Wei received it, put it in front of him, and closely inspected it. This is a fragment of a totem. In order to be preserved until now, it should be the best part of the totem. The patterns on it is a kind of ancient totem. Wei's black eyes flashed with an unique light. Ancient totem? Zhuomo had a shocked expression. It is a kind of primitive seal script, Wei explained. In ancient times humans, Yao, or Mo lived in tribes. They gradually formed their own beliefs and totems were born from that. The Xiuzha scripts were developed from totems. However, the two have core differences. Seal scripts are the changes of Ling power, while totems are related to Ling power, they are related more to sacrificial offerings. Sacrificial offering. Sacrificial offerings are the most important matters of each tribe. When Wei spoke to this, he suddenly said, I cannot explain the reason behind this. But this was enough for Zhuomo and Pu Yao to feel shock. The person and the Yao exchanged a look and saw the shock in each other's eyes. Wei could speak so much about such ancient matters. What was this guy's true origins? Then what is the use of this totem fragment? Zhuo raised the fragment in his hand and asked what he was most concerned about. Wei said, the best materials that each tribe could find were used to make totems. Other than being made of extraordinary material, it must have undergone countless years of sacrificial offerings to survive tens of thousands of years and not be destroyed. Maybe this fragment has Ling kernel. Has Ling kernel? Zhuo's eyes lit up. He hurriedly channeled his spiritual power into the fragment in his hand, but when his consciousness was blocked on the outside, he was even happier. Ling kernel. It actually was Ling kernel. The stronger the material resisted, it mean the higher the grade of the Ling kernel of the material. Materials that had Ling kernels, no matter what material it was the best materials. Because the talismans that could be forged from it could have cognition. Talismans that had cognition meant they had room to grow, for example, Lil Pagoda. There were countless ways to substitute for the poor quality of a material, but Ling kernel was something that was a matter of chance. He had picked up a treasure. Zhuo suddenly became excited. He was just saying. How could such a big and ancient battlefield not leave behind anything good? He understood now. The fiendish energy of this place was so thick that the fiend soul beasts born were intelligent. If there was anything good, they could not have escaped the eyes of these fiend soul beasts. It seemed the good stuff of this ancient battlefield had been divided up by the fiend soul beasts. Zhuo's eyes flashed greedily and his drool escaped the corner of his mouth. If this was the case, they only needed to focus on the fiend soul beasts. Chapter 398, The New Mood of Golden Crow Camp. Speaking of forging, Zhuo had not done it for a very long time. In the past, he had needed to rely on the power of talismans. He had an unorthodox background in forging, but he did have a powerful weapon in Golden Crow fire. Adding on that he had practiced arduously, his handiwork was relatively good. When his cultivation path had leaned towards emphasizing great daimyo physique later on, the time spent practicing forging and danmaking had naturally been reduced. Rawness was one factor, and the other was the lack of high-level forging techniques. This caused him to not know what talisman to forge with the totem fragments on hand even though he had a 6th-grade flame, the Great Day-Striped Flame. Also, these totem fragments were great materials, but he wasn't familiar with them at all. After wavering for a while, Zhuo still decided to go to Golden Crow Camp. The campsite of Golden Crow Camp was completely different than others. Only they had set up camp on a slave transporting boat. The entire interior of the slave transporting boat had been completely remodeled. It wasn't just the layout that was completely different, almost all the formations had been changed. Every board of the ship had been carved with large and small formations. Right now, the structural integrity of this slave transporting boat was frightening. This group of people were extremely bored yet also scared of death. So they used everything they could think of to ensure this boat as their lifesaver. At the very center of the boat was the most important talisman of this slave transporting boat, the Crimson Fiend Cauldron. The present Crimson Fiend Cauldron had shrunk to the height of a person. The cauldron had also turned from crimson red to jet black. Its design had been simple to start with, and now it seemed even denser and dignified. The Crimson Fiend Cauldron had continuously tempered itself and now showed signs that it was going to level up. At the present, the Crimson Fiend Cauldron had become the heart of this slave transporting boat. Every day, it turned large amounts of fiendish energy into Ling power, and passed the Ling power through the dense spiderweb formations to every corner of the slave transporting boat. Some Ling plant farmers decided to just stay in the rooms and plant Ling grains together. The beast speakers, led by Chun Yucheng, raised all kinds of Ling beasts in the boat. It was possible to hear the calls of all kinds of Ling beasts and very busy workers. Everyone loved this boat. The density of Ling energy inside the slave-transporting boat could compare to some secret paradises. What satisfied everyone the most was the atmosphere inside the boat, especially after Zhuemo had assigned the study of Mo matrices to Golden Crow Camp. The seal show that had originally been in Vermilion Bird Camp had been moved here to study Mo matrices together. These production shouja were not as fearless as combat shouja, but they had more skills. Additionally, the mood of the Golden Crow Camp was very liberal. The two masters, Ji Wei and Sun Bao, encouraged everyone to play around, so the youthfulness and liveliness of this group of young people were expressed to the maximum. In this place, every person could do what interested them. There was nothing that was forced upon them, but it was not easy if they just wanted to get by through slacking. One factor was that the mood was so, and everyone looked down upon those that slacked off. The other factor was, beyond their basic needs, every person's income and access to resources was based on their efforts. If one wanted more materials, wanted more spells, then work hard. So when Zhuemo visited Golden Crow Camp again, the completely new Golden Crow Camp stunned him. Fortunately, every still recognized boss. The two masters quickly hurried over. Darren. The two respectfully bowed. Their cultivations had improved greatly and reached the later stages of Ningmai. Zhuemo looked at the two people and found that their complexions were much better than they had been in the past. Thinking about their cautious and timid conduct of the past, and looking at the steady presence of these two people, it was a completely different world. Zhuemo said with a smile, "It seems everyone is living pretty well." "This place isn't actually bad," Sun Bao said with a smile. "Everyone has something to do, the Ling power is abundant, and there is materials to waste. It's natural for us to live well." The two of them were very content with the present life. They were all people that were intoxicated with forging and very experienced. The spells and formations that Zhuemo had given them could be said to be invaluable. Adding on the abundant Ling power inside the slave-transporting boat, the two of them even felt indications of having a breakthrough. However, what made the two of them feel the most proud about was not their individual breakthroughs, but the growth of the entire Golden Crow Camp. The good atmosphere, the abundant supplies, large amounts of spells as reference, and all kinds of novel problems had caused the youthful shouja of Golden Crow Camp to grow at astounding speed. These young shouja of meager backgrounds did not waste such a valuable opportunity. Their efforts and hard work caused both masters to feel very comforted. "Has Darren come for the golden-winged great rock?" Ji Wei asked. Master Jia Wei's question reminded Zhuemo. He hurriedly asked, "How's the progress on the golden-winged great rock?" "We've only solved half." Ji Wei said embarrassedly, "The golden-winged great rock matrix is extremely complex. Our cultivation is not enough." Thankfully, with the addition of Li Zhua, the rate of advancement quickened. Up until now, we have found 3 formations and they are wondrous. The two people's faces were bright. The wonders of the 3 formations had broadened their visions. The reason that the two of them showed signs of core formation was a benefit from comprehending these 3 formations. Zhuemo had formed some impression of Li Zhua. At Ningmai stage and he was able to forge second-grade seal soldiers, he was very talented. "This is not urgent, we advance go slowly." Zhuemo knew how complex the golden-winged great rock matrix was. In the past, he had studied it for a long time. He was already shocked at Ji Wei and the others' advancement speed. He then stated the goal of his trip. "I've come this time for another matter." The two hurriedly peaked their ears. Zhuemo took out the totem fragments and handed them to the two. These are fragments of ancient totems that have remained over tens of thousands of years. They have formed Ling kernels. Ancient totem fragments. Ling kernels. The two paled. Zhuemo's words instantly destroyed their mental barriers. These are good, but even the best stuff, if they cannot be used, are useless. Suemo continued, I've come to find you to see what ways you guys have to forge them into talismans. Sun Bao and Ji Wei stared at each other. After a while, Sun Bao hesitantly opened. Why doesn't Darren forge them? Such a precious treasure, it would be too much of a pity if it was ruined. Suemo naturally would be ashamed to say that his skills had been lain to waste. However, facing the duo's worries, he said with a smile, don't worry about ruining them. After speaking, he took out 2 more pieces. The 2 instantly became dumbstruck. These might be valuable, but everyone should not be timid due to this, Suemo said smugly. These have come from the bodies of the fiend's soul beasts. We probably can get more in the future. Sun Bao and Ji Wei's eyes instantly lit up. No forging Xiaoxia would not be moved when they heard this. You guys take it and study it. Suemo gave each of them a totem fragment and kept one for himself. He didn't want to lose a skill like forging that could earn Jingxia. If he became poor one day, he might have to rely on this to eat. Also, he had the 6th grade flame, Great Day Striped Flame, it would be too much of a pity if his forging skills were left to rust. He asked Sun Bao to find an empty room and started to ponder it himself. Xiao Mo. Ming Yuzi, who was sweeping around the Yao city, saw this name and his gaze couldn't help but still as he stopped walking. He had a surprised expression. To be able to see Xiao Mo's bounty on the Yao city of the 3rd Prezion, that meant that Xiao Mo had already entered the 3rd prison. With Xiao Mo's strength, it did not surprise him that Xiao Mo had entered the 3rd prison. What surprised him was that Xiao Mo had put up a bounty of his own. Ming Juzi's first response was, is this guy wanted to retaliate against the Ji family? His fingertip swiped across this bounty. The contents that opened up caused his to still. Battle of Seal Extinction. This extremely unfamiliar phrase caused Ming Juzi to not remember anything about it in a moment. A while later, he finally recalled some blurry impression about the Battle of Sealed Extinction. The curiosity in Ming Juzi's heart instantly rose. He hurriedly read on. Xiao Mo's bounty desired information on the Battle of Sealed Extinction. The more specific, the better, and they could even talk face to face. He then looked at the reward. His heart instantly jumped, it was a very high number. This was an extremely strange bounty. The requirements of the bounty was very indistinct, just that the more specific the better. And the goal of the bounty was unusually obscure. A battle that happened in ancient times. Xiao Mo was a historical enthusiast. This speculation was too funny. Did he have some treasure map of the Battle of Sealed Extinction? That was possible. If it was like that, then it was very probably that Xiao Mo would put up such a bounty. Thinking about the results of his past investigation, Ming Juzi's heart suddenly started to burn. He had expended great energy to finally pin down what high-level Yao arts were used by Nanyu and Sangzhe. South Sky Arrow Art, and Gray Scar Art. These 2 Yao arts that had been lost for a long time once again appeared in front of the word, and the crux of this entire matter all pointed to one Yao, Xiao Mo. Maybe. Thinking about this, Ming Juzi decided to take this quest. Bao Yi felt today was an unfortunate day. Just after Boss had left, Gongsun Darren had arrived. It was fine to interact with Boss, but he couldn't help but tremble whenever he interacted with Gongsun Darren. Whenever he saw Gongsun Darren's peerlessly bashful smile, he couldn't help but shiver. Darren, do you have any orders? Bao Yi was very respectful. I've come to find Fiend Soul Beast beads. Gongsun Cha was slightly embarrassed. For some unknown reason, when he saw Gongsun Cha's shy expression like that of a 17-year-old, Bao Yi's legs started to tremble slightly. How many do you need? Give me all of them. Gongsun Cha seemed to be even more embarrassed. If it was any other person that came to Bao Yi and said this, he would definitely kick them in the face. opening their mouths and demanding all of a certain material. Go dream. But facing Gong Sun Darren, he said with the utmost respect, yes. Immediately, he used the fastest speed he was able to achieve to take out all the fiend's soul beast beads and gave them to Gong Sun Cha. Gong Sun Cha contentedly left. Bao Yi's legs softened and he sat down on the ground with lingering fear on his face. He finally sent off this killing god. However, he was slightly puzzled. What did Gong Sun Darren want so many fiend's soul beast beads for? Due to this, he had specially used the Great Day Banded Flame to reforge the Sonic Lightning Walnuts to familiarize himself with the more domineering and purer Great Day Banded Flame. It had to be said that the 6th grade flame's strength was as extraordinary as expected. He had almost forged a Sonic Lightning Walnut into a pile of silver water. The dominant nature of the fire could be seen. This also caused Sui Mo to realize his weakest area. The skill of a forger was primarily decided by 3 factors. The first was forging knowledge. One had to be familiar with all kinds of materials, their combinations, and the formations. The second was cultivation. One's cultivation directly determined the control over the flame, the carving of formations. The higher the formation, the more complex it was, and the more it demanded of Ling power. The third were forging tools, fire seeds and cauldrons. If it was a water method, one also needed Ling springs and cold ponds etc. Sui Mo was not weak on forging knowledge. Even though he did not understand high-level forging methods, he had read a great variety of forging jade scrolls. In the area of formations, the entire Golden Crow camp had no one that could compare to him. After the grind of the 10-finger prison, the endless Yao arts broadened his visions and his affinity for formations came even more easily to him. And tools were his strong points. 6th grade Great Day Banded Flame was definitely a peak fire seed that could not be bought with Jingxia. His weakest area was cultivation. When he had been reforging the Sonic Lightning Walnut, he had detected this. In terms of cultivation, he was just in Ningmai. Originally, he had not felt this kind of cultivation was low, but when he had channeled the Great Day Banded Flame today, he had found just how weak his Ling power was. The Great Day Banded Flame was like a colossal being, and his Ling power wasn't enough to even get a good glance at it. If the Great Day Banded Flame had not been formed from his Great Day Mo physique and was from the same origins, he would have been harmed in the backlash, much less channeled it. Now Sui Mo was depressed. What was more depressing than having a treasure and not being able to use it? Cultivation, cultivation. He was stuck at cultivation. Deeply struck by this blow, Sui Mo ran into the sea of consciousness and found Pu Yao. He asked without any greeting, Pu, is there any methods that can immediately increase my cultivation? Pu Yao looked at Sui Mo like he was looking at an idiot. What do you think Ling power is? Sui Mo was unsatisfied. Are there really no methods? I do have a good amount of spells here. Pu Yao glanced at Sui Mo, but with your quality of physique, you probably have to cultivate 10 more years to reach Jindan. Unless you have worldly treasures. Do you have such things? Sui Mo was instantly sorrowful. Worldly treasures that could increase cultivation, how could he have those? With his present Ling power, it was a delusion to think that he could control the 6th grade Great Day Banded Flame. It wasn't that he had not thought of using formations to control the Great Day Banded Flame, but no normal materials could tolerate the 6th grade Great Day Banded Flame. Damn it! Wasn't he wasting it? Sui Mo turned to Wei. Wei also showed an apologetic expression. He also didn't have any good solutions. Coming out of the sea of consciousness, Sui Mo's mood was terrible. The Great Day Banded Flame was a top fire seed, the totem fragment was a top material, but he could only stare at them. It wasn't even as good as Golden Crow Fire. That was just 4th grade, but at least he could control that easily. he finally realized a great problem. Ling power would always be his greatest weakness and he had to improve in it unless he wanted to give up on dan-making and forging. No matter if it was Yao arts or Mo skills, they were very powerful, but they could not replace Ling power's uses in other areas. Fine, he wouldn't think on it so much. Surviving and leaving the sealed extinction battlefield was the biggest priority right now. Mo quickly let go of his mood. He ran into the 10-finger prison. He first went to the Yao city and received a letter left for him. The writer was a Yao named Ming Ju Zi. He had written detailed inquiries on what kind of information Mo needed on the battle of sealed extinction. This letter instantly caused Mo's low mood to rise greatly. Compared to his losses in forging, the information on the battle of sealed extinction was much more important. He hurriedly wrote a response and replied to every question the other had. After doing this, Mo's depression was swept away. He excitedly ran to the wasteland beast chessboard to find Nan Yu and Xianxia. However, he did not find the two but found Wang Lin first. This young person was gradually recovering and was very happy when he saw Mo. Xianxia was one of the primary hopes of the clan, and was urgently cultivating gray scar art. A short while later, Mo saw a slightly tired Nan Yu. Due to the defeats at the front lines, everyone was furiously cultivating now. Nan Yu had a strong feeling of danger and was furiously teaching her clansmen to cultivate. Mo thought of Nan Yu's financial situation. The front lines had lost, so the prices of necessities would definitely have skyrocketed. Nan Yu's days were probably very difficult. He gave a portion of the money he had to Nan Yu. Having experienced war, Mo told her to spend more time on cultivation. In troubled times, strength was the basis of survival. Nan Yu pressed her lips together tightly. She did not refuse and seriously nodded. Mo explained in detail what to pay attention to during wartime. These were all his experiences. Nan Yu was not the only one to listen carefully. Wang Lin, who was at the side, hurriedly cast a recording Yao art to record Mo's words. Chapter 400, Draft Notice. Mo was downcast at the thought that his Ling power was a constraint, but he was not demotivated by this. Instead, it had roused his fighting spirit. Didn't have any other ways. What he first thought of was the 5-element glass bead inside his body. This 5-element glass bead was of extraordinary origins and greatly increased his affinity towards the 5 elements. When he had been at Wukong Mountain, he had benefited greatly from this. At present, the 5-element glass bead was not one of Mo's top talismans, but it was closely connected to Mo's origins and had a special importance. Mo had always been preoccupied and was unable to study it. At this time, Mo thought of it. The 5-element glass bead had merged into Mo's blood and flesh, so he could only inspect it with his consciousness. However, when his consciousness inspected the 5-element glass bead, it was blocked by a gentle power. Mo stilled. He recalled that Pu Yao had said to him that something was sealed inside the 5-element glass bead. A cautious expression came onto his face. This Ling power was not strong, but it was very pure. The sealer should be a Xiuzha above Jindan. Surprised by his finding, Mo didn't think much about it. In these 2 short years, he had encountered many battles and had almost died a few times. His life philosophies had also changed. Like his stance regarding his changed appearance and his origins, he still cared greatly and would endeavor to discover the truth, but he would not be as impulsive as he had been in the past. Facing the threat of war, living in an unpredictable environment where he could perish at a moment's notice, surviving was more important than anything else. Having personally experienced the cruelties of war, he knew just how small and insignificant a person's life was. They were like a sapling in the middle of the storm. It took all of his strength to struggle and search for that thread of life. After being baptized in battle, his heart was much stronger, and his self-control was stronger as well. Pu Yao had also clearly told him that he could not break the seal on the 5-element glass bead with his low cultivation. So Zhuo was not astonished about his failure. His consciousness wrapped around the 5-element glass bead. Zhuo tried to find the smallest weakness in the seal, but this thin layer of Ling power showed him that difference between cultivation stages was not so easy to overcome. He shook his head, withdrew his consciousness from the 5-element glass bead. His hopes of using the 5-element glass bead was bankrupt. Then what methods were there? While Zhuo's mind dwelled on the topic, a light flashed through his mind. He thought of another method, Yao arts. Could he use Yao arts to forge? Yao arts could also control fire. The door-sized swords they held were frightening to see, but if it was a Mo with a strong body, the power would have been several levels higher. Let's just work with what we have, Pu Yao said lazily. Compared to the past, these days are already much better. Wei nodded and agreed with Pu Yao's words. This vicious ground to Zhuo Mo and the others was undoubtedly a poor one. However, for Pu Yao and Wei, it was much better than Wukong Mountain. At the very least, they no longer needed to constantly worry about that withered old man suddenly coming with his sword to exterminate Yamo. Your student seems to have encountered trouble, Wei reminded Pu Yao. I can't help him, Pu Yao said unconcernedly. His hands did not stop. Do you understand that the methods of Xiaoxia forging? Wei shook his head. Mo cultivate their bodies and cannot forging. It's not that you cannot understand, but there is no need to understand. Pu Yao was clearly opposed to the Xiaoxia methods. Yao cultivate the spirit, Mo their bodies, why do they need to forge? If he wants to work on forging, he can only rely on himself. Wei was silent for a moment before he suddenly said, why not let him cultivate Yao arts and Mo skills at the same time? If you don't want all of us to end up dead, it's best if you do not have such a dangerous idea, Pu Yao said warningly. If he dies, you and I cannot escape either. Humph, it already makes me feel unsafe that he cultivated a Mo physique. Who made it so that your Mo physique cultivation is so dangerous? I don't want to die so soon. Mo physique cultivation is not as dangerous as you think, Pu Yao impatiently interrupted Wei. If there are safer ways, then why risk it? Do you have a problem with your head? If you want to find a successor, other than him, you can pick anyone. Guard camp has so many people, just pick one. Shu Long isn't bad, how about it? Have you considered it? Wei shook his head. His talent is not enough. Wake up. Pu Yao was full of disdain. Look at our state, you are still holding on to those traditions. It's already good if you can find a successor, yet you're still so picky. Pu Yao ranted on disdainfully, but his hand movements did not slow at all. When the last few lights entered the bodies of the golden armor guards, he finally showed slight satisfaction. The golden armor guards were completely transformed. The scaled golden armor that had covered their bodies had disappeared, a complete suit of heavy black armor replaced it. The heavy armor was fitted so well it seemed like one object. They were like metal monsters. The terrifying presence that emanated from their bodies made people fearful. Black spikes protruded from their shoulders, elbows, knees and other important places. The tip of each black spike was a strange blood-like red. At the crown of their helmets was a rhombus-shaped golden mark that resembled the blood rhombus on Pu Yao's forehead. Pu Yao rubbed his chin and scanned the new golden armor guards. He said to himself, these trashy swords are no longer suitable. Oh, that broken sword in Wei Xing's hands isn't bad, I wonder where he got it. A moment later, he shook his head, and muttered, never mind. First we will work on this, let's think about weapons in the future. Suddenly, Pu Yao raised his head and his eyes flashed. At the same time, Wei also raised his head. Lei Peng and Nian Lu's faces were pale white. After Darren had announced the fiend-soul beast hunting mission, everyone was very enthusiastic. Other than engraving new formations, a piece of gossip was secretly passed on: the totem fragments were materials that had Ling kernels. Supposedly Darren had already tasked the Golden Crow camp with studying the forging talismans out of the totem fragments. Those with foresight instantly detected the opportunity. Their past experiences told them if Darren gave something to Golden Crow camp, it probably was in preparation to give to everyone. No matter if it was the new formations, or the new talismans that hadn't been forged yet, they all needed to be traded for by points. If they didn't take this opportunity to earn points, were they dumb? Lei Peng and Nian Lu were stronger than the average Vermilion Bird camp members, but they were still weaker than Ma Fan and the others. The two of them decided to pair up to hunt fiend soul beasts. They worked very well together and were efficient, producing great results. The past combat experiences had not been wasted. The strength of Vermilion Bird camp had clearly increased. Many people did not even need to use the sword formation to comprehend sword essence. Of course, part of this was Wei Xing's work. Lei Peng and Nian Lu's improvement was especially evident. The fiend soul beasts they were afraid of in the past gradually became less dangerous for them. Without detecting it, they had traveled a long way from the campsite. Everything had been proceeding smoothly. Their luck was unusually good. They had encountered many more fiend soul beasts than usual. The outstanding result caused the two to start fantasizing about their wonderful future lives, with engraved new formations and using their new talismans. Until they encountered this terrifying fiend soul beast. Chapter 401, Big Guy. This fiend soul beast was more than 3 times the size of an average fiend soul beast. Its body shimmered with a metallic sheen. It stared coldly at Lei Peng and Nian Lu. Its icy stare didn't contain any hint of warmth. Lei Peng and Nian Lu felt as though they were 2 little insects about to be stomped under the steps of a colossal giant. The other only needed to gently raise its foot and could crush them. This fiend soul beast was unusually ugly. Its flat head was like that of a toad. The wide maw was tightly clenched and its jaw askew. The hunched posture was poised to strike. Every tense muscle fiber was visible to the eye. Its abnormally thick limbs made it appear asymmetric, but when these unbalanced features were combined together, it left them terror-stricken from the sense of danger. The duo's scalps felt numb, but they did not dare to move rashly. The two of them were experienced. They knew if that they ran right now, there would be no chance of survival. The fiend soul beast was motionless as it gazed down at the duo with indifference. "What do we do?" Lei Peng maintained his posture as he asked in a low voice. "Drag it out." Nian Lu was also motionless. His eyes twirled about. This thing is making such a spectacle. The others will definitely detect the disturbance. We will drag the fight out until they come to reinforce us. At the same time, the fiend soul beast suddenly opened its mouth. The terrifyingly wide mouth opened like a gaping maw. "Move!" Lei Peng and Nian Lu's bodies moved at the same time. The two of them darted away, one to the right and one to the left, each gathered all the Ling power they could muster. The sword energy and saber energy left their hands at the same time and howled as they flew towards the fiendish soul beast. The fiendish soul beast seemed to not see it. Its eyes widened, and it inhaled through its enormous mouth. Hiss! The fiendish mist in the surroundings gathered furiously towards its gaping mouth. At a rate visible to the naked eye, a red-black ball of light formed in its open mouth. It actually condensed the fiendish mist it had gathered into a ball of light the size of a fist. Ding ding! 2 clear sounds of impact rang out. Lei Peng and Nina Lu's complexions changed. Their sword and saber energies had struck the body of the fiend soul beast and only caused 2 sparks to fly. What kind of monster was this? These two were both Xiaoxia that had comprehended essence. Their blows had been thrown with all their power, but they hadn't even left a mark behind. The duo's heart sank. This big guy's strength was far beyond their predictions. A black-red light erupted from the open mouth of the fiend's soul beast. It frightened the two into using all of their power to dodge to the sides. Boom! The red and black light lit up behind them. It was Lei Peng and Nian Lu. The three were teammates from Sky Peak Platoon. Ma Fan was very familiar with the presences of these two, and instantly recognized them. The duo's appearances were messy and panicked, which made it evident that the situation was very dangerous. Ma Fan snorted coldly, and his speed increased again. When he flew closer and saw Lei Peng and Nian Lu's sorry states, fury rose in his eyes. With a long howl, his body suddenly shot up in the air. The sword essence vibrated from his body and continuously increased. When he reached his peak, his sword essence had accumulated to an extreme and was blinding. The fiend's soul beast raised its head and shot a fiendish mist bullet towards Ma Fan in the air. Ma Fan could clearly sense the danger from the black-red light. If this was any other situation, he would definitely dodge and wait for a chance to strike. But at this time, his Ling power and sword essence were surging without being held back. He seemed to be inside a burning fire cauldron. Every muscle felt as though it was being sliced by 1,000 knives. He knew those were fine sword essences. His sword essence might have reached the stage of manifestation, but he still needed a considerable amount of practice to control them at will. He had seen Teacher Wei practice the sword. The sword essence was concentrated without a single thread going astray. That was the stage he dreamed about. He tried to control the sword essence around his body and concentrated them inside his flying sword. His blood vessels expanded and were on the verge of rupturing. The countless fine sword essences were like knives, but Ma Fan ignored all of this. All of his attention was focused on the merging of Ling power and sword essence. Teacher Wei had said only when Ling power and sword essences came together would they have the greatest power. With Ling power and no sword essence, it only had the appearance. With sword essence but no Ling power, there was blood but no flesh. All the sword essence and Ling power in his body furiously flew towards the sword. The sword hummed lightly, and released a dazzling blue light. This layer of blinding light also covered Ma Fan. The blue light was like a drop of ink that had splattered onto a white piece of paper. It spread outwards at astounding speeds. In the blink of an eye, the area Tenjiang around Ma Fan was as blue as the sky. The black-red light finally reached him. The sword energies that were as blue as the sky tore apart the fiendish mist. In a patch of red-black fiendish mist, it was peerlessly dazzling. Pew! The sword energy sliced across the fiendish mist bullet without any resistance like a hot knife through butter and entered the forehead of the fiendish soul beast. Pew! Black liquid flew and turned to a ball of mist in the air before disappearing. The fiend's soul beast wailed in pain. For the first time, its icy cold eyes showed a ripple of emotion. It seemed unable to believe it had been injured. The ripples quickly turned to anger. The ant-like prey in front of it had actually wounded it. The fiendish mist in the surroundings seemed to have felt an invisible magnetism and furiously flooded towards it. This guy, he is this strong now. Lei Peng was gaping as he stared. Handsome. Too handsome. Nian Lu's face was shocked. They both recognized Ma Fan's sword scripture. 5th grade, Clear Sky sword scripture, it had been a spoil of victory after Darren killed Clear Sky old forefather. There were many in Vermilion Bird Camp that cultivated this sword scripture, since it was a 5th grade sword scripture and was very attractive. However, Ma Fan was the first to cultivate Clear Sky sword scripture to this level. He really was too strong. With one move, Ma Fan was able to wound the fiend's soul beast that they could do nothing to. However, when they saw Ma Fan panting in the air, they realized that this move was at a great cost to Ma Fan. How are you? Lei Ping turned to ask Nian Lu. Battle spirit roiled in his eyes. I won't die. Nian Lu looked at the sky and smiled with slight difficulty. He is such a show-off, how can I let this guy take all the glory? The two rose into the sky and formed a triangle with Ma Fan. When Lei Ping and Nian Lu stood at his flanks behind him, Ma Fan's confidence increased. Between the three, a sharp killing intent formed. The terror in their eyes decreased. This big guy definitely has something good on his body. Lei Peng's eyes flashed viciously. Kill it. Nian Lu said maliciously. Troublesome, Ma Fan muttered. The three figures charged towards the fiend soul beast. Wei Sheng, Xia Shan, and Zhong Ru flew through the fiendish mist at high speed. They had all detected the alarming presence in the distance and knew a situation had occurred. They had hurriedly acted. Deep in thought, Sui Mo was ignorant of everything else. The fire Yao art that had been spinning on the tip of his finger suddenly stopped on his palm and burned silently. Sui Mo's fingers slowly started to move. As his finger movements changed, the Ling power was like an undercurrent that silently wrapped around the wisp of fire. The fire wisp shook and became extremely unstable as though it could extinguish at any moment. Pia pia pia, a string of light explosions sounded around the wisp of fire. The finger movements gradually became faster. The fire wisp shook more fiercely. Suddenly, it exploded. In this instant, Sui Mo's eyes suddenly lit up. He seemed thoughtful. Fire Yao art, consciousness, Ling power, controlling fire. He seemed to see a thread that connected them. Chapter 402, The results from Ming Ju Zi's investigations. Sui Mo had received a letter from Ming Ju Zi. His expression was excited and filled with hope. It said that Ming Ju Zi had found some important clues. There was nothing that could make Sui Mo happier than this, nothing was more urgent. He didn't even stop to go look for Nan Yu and Sang Zhe. Ming Ju Zi quickly appeared. He recognized Sui Mo at a glance. Sir Xiao Mo Gu, I am Ming Ju Zi. Sui Mo felt this person was familiar but he could not remember where he had seen Ming Ju Zi before. He politely responded, Sir Ming Ju Zi, good day. Ming Ju Zi did not waste words and casted a recording Yao art. In here is everything about the Battle of Sealed Extinction, Ming Ju Zi said. This battle is truly too ancient. There are very few records about it. I'm very sorry, this is all the information that I was able to find. Sui Mo quickly scanned the contents inside the recording Yao art. The general era in which the Battle of Sealed Extinction occurred was not known, but it was approximately 25,000 years ago. It happened at that place that was called Constant Scarlet Jie. Supposedly, because the fiercest fighting had occurred near the Jie River, the Jie River entrance was destroyed in the fighting, and Constant Scarlet Jie became inaccessible, and disappeared from the Jie maps from then on. Sui Mo looked hard at the ancient Jie map. This Jie map was extremely primitive. Sui Mo's gaze landed on the several Jie surrounding Constant Scarlet Jie. From these, he could generally judge the position of Constant Scarlet Jie. Skyfold Jie, Gentle Mountain Jie, and Dazzling Splendor Jie. These three bordered Constant Scarlet Jie. Do you know the general position of Constant Scarlet Jie based on the present Jie maps? Sui Mo asked Ming Ju Zi. It is probably in the area of Bloody Sky Metropolis Jie. Ming Ju Zi had prepared well. Constant Scarlet Jie disappeared a long time ago, so it is hard to judge its position. But Skyfold Jie and Dazzling Splendor Jie are presently part of Bloody Sky Metropolis Jie. Gentle Mountain Jie is the territory of Xiuzhe and is a dangerous area. If we use these Jie as references, Constant Scarlet Jie should be near the border of Bloody Sky Metropolis Jie. People have gone to explore this area before, but no one has found the existence of Constant Scarlet Jie. These questions strengthened Ming Juzi's belief that Xiao Mo Gu was searching for treasure. Otherwise, why would he research the position of constant scarlet Jie? Bloody Sky Metropolis Jiezhua Mo was stunned. Anyone with some common knowledge would know this place. Wasn't that the place for the Yao hunt? From all the news reports, he knew Bloody Sky Metropolis Jie was where the heaviest fighting between Xiuzha and Yaomua took place. For Zhuo Mo, this was not good news. Previously, he had decided to determine his present location, and then use transportation formations to leave the ghastly place. But hearing that constant scarlet Jie was in Bloody Sky Metropolis Jie, his heart instantly cooled halfway. He had heard the general story of how Bloody Sky Metropolis Jie had formed. Places like these were unsuitable for using transportation formations because the interference caused by the formation was great. When the Yao hunt had been most fashionable in the past, the Xiuzha attempts in putting down transportation formations inside Bloody Sky Metropolis Jie had never succeeded. All of the supplies had been transported in on treasure ships. Zhuo Mo had only a basic understanding of transportation formations. Because he couldn't predict the interference, he didn't dare to move rashly. Any small mistake in the transportation formation was terrifying. The reason that they had been transported to that ghastly place was that someone had changed the transportation formation in Sky Water Jie. This plan seemed to have failed. Zhuo Mo quickly discarded this idea. His attention was placed on another sentence: the bulk of the fighting was near the Jie River. This sentence caused Zhuo Mo's eyes to light up. After searching through the fiendish mist all this time, they had discovered some trends. The closer to the center of the battlefield they went, the heavier the black fiendish energy was, and the stronger the fiend's soul beasts. If it was like that. Zhuo Mo quickly organized his thoughts and became more excited as he thought. This way, they could quickly find the past Jie River of Constant Scarlet Jie. The report speculated the reason that Constant Scarlet Jie had disappeared was that the Jie River from it towards other Jie had broke. This had caused the appearance that Constant Scarlet Jie had disappeared. If they could find the location of the previous Jie River, and then open the Jie River. This way, the chances they could leave would increase greatly. Zhuo Mo repeatedly looked over the information to imprint it deep into his mind. Ming Juzi did not hurry him and patiently waited for Zhuo Mo to finish reading. A while later, Zhuo Mo raised his head in satisfaction. "This is your payment." Ming Juzi gathered his courage and said, "Sir Xiao Mo Gu, I hope to use the reward to exchange for a Yao art." He then added, "If you have it." Zhuo Mo paused. Ming Juzi's request was unexpected, but he still asked, "What Yao art?" "Water wood light art." When Ming Juzi finished speaking, he looked closely at Zhuo Mo. He was extremely nervous. Water wood light art. In the Sea of Consciousness, Pu Yao paused upon hearing the name of the Yao art. He abruptly said to Zhuo Mo, "Ask him if he knows Ming Duan." "Do you know Ming Duan?" Zhuo Mo asked. Ming Juzi suddenly became excited. "That is my ancestor." "Does Darren know ancestor?" In the Sea of Consciousness, Pu Yao was silent, and Wei sighed. "Pu, you know." Actually, with Pu Yao's reactions, Zhuo Mo knew that Pu Yao definitely knew Ming Duan and their relationship wasn't just a casual one. However, he was slightly puzzled. He thought of Nanyu. Pu Yao's attitude back then had also been like this. "Tell him," Pu Yao did not reply and said, "the Yao art will be given, but he must follow you." As expected, the conditions were just the same as Nanyu. Zhuo Mo muttered inside, but he still repeated this to Ming Juzi. Ming Juzi unhesitatingly bowed. This subordinate is willing to follow Darren. Giving the water wood light art to Ming Juzi, he hurriedly got him to leave. He was filled with curiosity, and decided to get to the bottom of the situation. He straightforwardly asked Pu Yao, "Pu, did you know their ancestors? Why do you have their Yao arts?" After remaining silent for a while, Pu Yao finally spoke. Their ancestors were once my subordinates. Sui Mo stilled. He had thought that Pu Yao had a close connection to these clans but definitely had not thought it would be this kind of relationship. That year, in our final battle, we were trapped. Pu Yao looked into the distance, his voice reminiscent. Everyone knew we could not escape. In order to make sure our lines of succession were not broken, we exchanged our Yao arts amongst ourselves, swore that whoever managed to survive was to pass on these Yao arts to their descendants. Sui Mo was silent. A moment later, he asked, "Then why do you require them to follow me? Just give it to them." I had not thought that their clans would have declined so far. Pu Yao twisted his mouth. Even if I give the Yao arts to them, their clans might not be able to survive on their own. Getting them to follow you is for their benefit. Your other skills might be average, but your ability to survive is top-notch. If they follow you, they can at least survive. Sui Mo's face instantly collapsed. Why push your past debts onto me? You are my student, who do I push them onto if not you? Pu Yao's tone was righteous. He then smiled smugly. It is fortunate that you are not inheriting from Wei. Tsk, otherwise, you would really know what trouble is. Wei said with slight helplessness, don't draw me into your matters. Finishing, he couldn't help but argue, all of the gravestone armors stand by their belief and oath, this is glory and strength. Sui Mo and Pu Yao rolled their eyes at the same time. They didn't like Wei's conduct at all. Sui Mo thought of another matter. He asked Pu Yao, then where did you get those Xianxia spells? Spoils of victory. Pu Yao had a proud expression. The Xianxia that died on my hands aren't normal ones. These spells are my collection. Aren't they good? Sui Mo's eyes lit up. How many? Give them all to me. Why give them to you? Pu Yao rolled his eyes. I'm your student. Sui Mo's tone was righteous. Even his expression was the same as Pu Yao. Pu Yao instantly choked. However, he reacted very quickly. It's not that I can't give them to you. What conditions? Sui Mo was very bold. First, you are my student, but look at yourself. What you're best at is cultivating the Mo physique. That is unacceptable. Pu Yao had been discontent about this for a long time. On the side, Wei's eyes flashed. He knew that Pu Yao had started his attack. No way about it. Who made it that the great Mo physique is powerful? We need to first preserve our lives first and then we can speak of other matters. Sui Mo threw up his hands and said with helplessness on his face. Pu Yao was not defeated by Sui Mo's words. When your Yao arts advance to a level, I will give you that level's spells. Sui Mo wasn't a softie. Want to tempt Ji? Not that easy. He turned his face and said to Wei, teach me Mo skills. Pu Yao's expression instantly became dark. Wei did not want to provoke Pu Yao, but he didn't want to only watch as Sui Mo truly gave up on his Mo physique. He had inspected everyone in guard camp. No person's talent could compare to Sui Mo. To be able to cultivate great Mo physique to this level, this was talent. The inheritance of the gravestone armor was a matter of chance. If he gave up on this opportunity, he didn't know when he would encounter another one. Also, Sui Mo seemed casual and offhand usually, and was never on the right path, but in reality, he had his own set of rules. He was not someone that would waver. He said with finesse, I gave an oath to not actively pass Mo skills on to you. Pu Yao instantly thought that it was not good. He knew just how clever his student was. As expected, Sui Mo snickered after hearing that and said, this is easy. I know, you are not able to break your oath. Oh, definitely won't go against your oath, there are many ways. Look, I stole and learned on my own, you didn't teach me. Wei was moved. He might hold by his oath, but he was not a pedantic person. Otherwise, he would not have disguised himself as the female to fool Pu Yao. Pu Yao's gaze instantly became extremely unfriendly, but he also had a great headache. This boy was more and more bandit-like and was becoming harder to deal with. Adding on that Wei was drooling after this boy, Pu Yao felt his mind was a mess. Just as Pu Yao was feeling a headache, an icy voice interrupted the three people that were arguing. Xiao Mo Gu. You have been drafted. In 10 days, report to the main base of the heavy earth core. If you do not arrive by the deadline, you will be punished by military law. Mo raised his head in shock. He found that at some time unknown to him, he was surrounded by 4 people with icy presences. The 4 people had faintly unfriendly expressions and tightly surrounded him. Drafted? Heavy earth core. Report in 10 days. Punishment by military law. Mo's mind blanked. What was this? Almost as though he saw Mu Shi's puzzlement, the clan leader said with a smile, Our Palace Lakewood clan has some power, including influence in the territory of Xianxia. However, the Council of Elders is probably also investigating in secret. Then aren't we wasting our efforts? Mu Shi asked. Ha. It seems that we are wasting our efforts, the clan leader chuckled, and a sharp light flashed through his eyes. But what if this Darren is an elder that survived from the 1000-year battle? Mu Shi first froze and then she unhesitatingly shook her head. That is impossible. Why is it impossible? The clan leader's eyes narrowed. I feel this is the most likely possibility. Otherwise, why did this Darren appear in the territory of Xianxia? A Darren that could cause stars of daytime, it wouldn't be strange for them to have some life-saving secret technique. Also, this relates to a secret that not many people know. What secret? Mu Shi unconsciously asked. But when the words came out, she regretted it. It was almost not appropriate for her to ask this. Just as she was feeling insecure, the clan leader did not conceal and said, In that great war, everyone knows that we Yaomao lost, but there are only a few that know some elders were captured. They were imprisoned in the Yao subduing tower. If I haven't guessed wrong, this unknown Darren most likely escaped from the Yao subduing tower. Mu Shi gaped and stared with wide eyes as she listened to the story. Seeing Mu Shi's expression, the clan leader smiled warmly. Don't find it strange. If this Darren really escaped from the Yao subduing tower, then they are definitely worth our Palace Lakewood clan investing all our power. He did not explain more. There were some things that Mu Shi would understand only when she reached a certain age. Heavy earth core. Mo felt puzzled. However, when he saw the attitudes of the surrounding 4 people, his face instantly darkened. The draft notice has already been delivered to Sir's follower, Nan Yu. Please report to the base of heavy earth core within 10 days, one of the people stared at Mo and said in a deep voice. He did not know who he had offended, but for him, this order held no influence. I have not heard of any heavy earth core and don't have any interest. Mo's expression was icy. Even though he did not understand why the other had come to find him, but in his view, the other's attitude was enough to indicate a problem. Surrounded by 4 people, he was not afraid. You wish to resist a military order? This person's expression darkened and his gaze became vicious. The other 3 people also had vicious glares as their bodies moved forward. A murderous energy instantly locked onto Mo. Even though they had heard that Mo had reconstructed the Wasteland Beast chessboard, but in the eyes of this military combat Yao, that wasn't anything. Strong yellow light flooded out of his body, and a fierce presence suddenly rose. Yellow sky heavy earth. There was the trump card of the heavy earth core's intermediate Yao arts because its power was closely comparable to high-level Yao arts. With a special method, it would gather all spiritual power one had in an instant and then explode. A suicide attack, dying together with the enemy. This move's spiritual power manipulation was not hard, but there were few people who could use it. That was because the caster, other than knowing how to use it, had to have the determination to die. The combat Yao showed a vicious smile that was twisted under the thick yellow light. He leapt toward Xuemo. He was fast, his figure disappeared from his position. Pew pew. Xuemo did not move, and only stared coldly at the other. In midair, the combat Yao looked in shock at his broken legs. He stared until the white light drowned the image of Xiao Mo in his vision, the figure that was icily staring at him. How was this possible? At the same time he turned to a ball of white light, a blade of ice appeared with a crisp sound in the air that had been empty before and shattered into pieces. Ice blade illusory formation. Xuemo had set up a simple ice blade illusory formation around this combat Yao, back when he had summoned the noon blade. He only had to wait for the other to fall into his trap. There weren't as many Yao in the third prison as there were at the Wasteland Beast chessboard, but there were still many Yao that saw this fight. Every spectator had shocked expressions, and the sound of inhales came in waves. What happened before them surpassed their imaginations. The result of the fight surpassed their imaginations, and the process of the fight had also surpassed their imaginations. For trained combat Yao were killed by Xiao Mo in one exchange each, and not one was able to threaten Xiao Mo at all. The death of the last combat Yao had left the strongest impression. The thick earthy yellow light, the shocking presence, everyone could tell that this was a powerful Yao art that could rival high-level Yao arts. But the result was completely unexpected. A low-level ice blade illusory formation had caused this powerful Yao art and figure to crumble. This result seemed too ridiculous and could even be considered fantastical. After watching the battle and the shock subsided, it caused many spectators to think. Those that could enter the third prison were not weak, and each had above-average combat experience. Their combat experience told them if what happened in front of them occurred outside the 10-finger prison, the result would likely have been the same. A terrifying guy. A thread of warmth gradually rose in Xuemo's icy eyes. He had exited his fighting mode. The exclamations and inhales of the spectators did not affect him at all. For him, this was just a fight that had nothing that was worthy of shock. However, when he thought of the words the combat Yao had said at the start, his brow couldn't help but furrow. He could disregard the other's undisguised threat, but Nan Yu and the others might be affected. This was slightly difficult. Xuemo muttered inside. When Xuemo got to the Wasteland Beast chessboard, he quickly found Nan Yu because Nan Yu was waiting for him. Before encountering Xuemo, Nan Yu was a normal little Yao. Right now, she was cultivating the high-level Yao art, South Sky Arrow art, but her vision and knowledge had not changed at their core. She was filled with worry when facing the power and authority of Heavy Earth Core. As a true Yao, she could understand the meaning of this draft notice better than Xuemo, especially at such a sensitive time with the Yao's repeated defeats at the front line. Seeing Xuemo, she was overjoyed. Darren. For an unknown reason, when she saw Darren, his peaceful face, his indifferent yet confident eyes, her restless heart quickly settled. Darren would definitely have a way. This thought unconsciously flashed through her mind but quickly took over it. You received the Heavy Earth Core draft notice. Xuemo did not waste words and asked Nan Yu. Yes, Darren. Nan Yu replied. At the same time, she cast a recording Yao art with her hand. She had recorded the contents of the draft notice inside. Since Darren already knew, then he definitely had a solution. She thought inside. Xuemo scanned it and understood. After thinking, he asked Nan Yu, if I do not want to accept the draft notice, is there any way? Darren, there is no solution. A voice came from behind him. It was Wang Lin that had coincidentally came as well. His expression was also filled with worry. Beside him was Wang Zhe. Seeing Zhuo Mo's eyes turn to him, Wang Lin grimaced and said, "Darren, the heavy earth core has sent the draft notice. If you disobey, they have the power to execute you. Is there no way at all?" Zhuo Mo's brow creased. Unless the military upper levels or the Council of Elders resolve this situation. Only the Council of Elders have the power to change this draft order. Wang Lin's voice was bitter. The heavy earth core is a regular core belonging directly to the military. The military high command has the right to interfere. The same can be said for the Council of Elders. They have the right to any affair. Which of you have a connection? Zhuo Mo asked. The three shook their heads simultaneously. Zhuo Mo saw this and understood. The Wisteria clan of the South Sky and the Grey clan had been in decline for too long. They were very far from the centers of power. "Darren, maybe I have a solution." Ming Juzi, who had rushed over to them, had managed to hear this. Zhuo Mo had let him leave, but he had not gone far. He had coincidentally heard some people passing by him discussing the conflict between Xiao Mo Gu and the heavy earth core. He had hurriedly ran over to search for Zhuo Mo. After Zhuo Mo introduced Ming Juzi as his new follower, everyone instantly felt closer. "Darren, this was definitely done by Yu Zizhou." Ming Juzi only had to think to understand what had gone on. "Yu Zizhou? Who is that?" Zhuo Mo's face was puzzled. Seeing the puzzlement on Darren's face, Ming Juzi couldn't laugh or cry. He could only explain, "Darren, do you remember the battle when you defeated 26 Yao? Yu Zizhou was the second one." "Oh, him." Zhuo Mo had a small impression. However, the one that gave him the deepest impression was the masked expert from the Blue Flower family. The military commander of Heavy Earth Corps is Yu Zizhou's uncle. Having spent a long time among experts, Ming Juzi was familiar with this kind of information. Yu Zizhou has worked very hard to pursue Ji Liu. He probably was thinking of Ji Liu when he challenged Darren, but he lost great face when he was defeated by Darren. I heard that Yu Zizhou was a very small-hearted person. Didn't think it was really so. Ming Juzi felt great disdain at Yu Zizhou's conduct. It really is despicable that Yu Zizhou is using such tricks, methods that should not be seen by the public, at such a sensitive time. Listening to Ming Juzi speak of the cause and effect, Zhuo Mo and the others finally understood. "What solution do you have?" Zhuo Mo asked. "It might not succeed," Ming Juzi said in a heavy voice, "but it is worth a try. We need to make a big fuss." "Big fuss?" Zhuo Mo asked. "Yes. Only when it is a big fuss will they not dare to do whatever they want," Ming Juzi said. "However, this will only make them cautious. In terms of law, they have the power to draft Darren. And then?" Zhuo Mo heard that Ming Juzi had following plans. "They will definitely persist in the drafting you, and this would deepen the upper levels' dislike of them. We only need to show slight weakness and capture the sympathy of the upper levels," Ming Juzi said calmly. "With the potential that Darren has shown, adding to our manufactured noise, there is a high possibility that we can get the upper levels to interfere." Nan Yu and the others lit up. This was a very outstanding plan. Even Zhuo Mo couldn't help but nod inside. Ming Juzi's plan was very plausible. But, maybe. An even crazier plan gradually formed in his mind. Chapter 405, Yuhang, the heavy earth core draft of Xiao Mo Gu is filled with the stench of scheming and trickery. As everyone knows, Yu Zizhou's uncle Yuhang is the military commander of Heavy Earth Corps. One does not need an outstanding imagination to easily smell the fishiness here. Xiao Moge's strength is undoubted. Even when surrounded by 4 combat Yao, he could easily defeat the other. It is not hard to accept such an accomplished youth giving his aid for this great war. However, we are suspicious. What would such an accomplished youth face if he enters the heavy earth core? Becoming cannon fodder is the most likely result. The draft notice by the heavy earth core is completely without precedent. This is a very bad beginning. We do not need to say more of what has occurred between Xiao Mo Zhen and Yu Ji Zhou. If a certain youth of great potential appears in the future, and is conscripted by the draft call, how is this different than being bandits? Or is it to say, if one does not have a background, with no protection from a Yao art house, then they are unable to even protect their own freedom? Yu Heng felt terrible inside and out. He looked darkly at his vice-commander. The sharp gaze of the corps commander made the vice-commander feel as though there was a blade at his back. Cold sweat poured down. "Speak, what happened?" Yu Heng's voice seemed to come between his teeth with dark coldness. The vice-commander knew that Darren was infuriated. He hadn't expected that the matter would develop so poorly. He said weakly, "A few days ago, young master said he needed a draft notice. So you gave it to him?" Yu Heng's facial skin shook as his eagle-like eyes stared at the vice-commander. The vice-commander finally lost control of his terror. He knew that Darren was truly angry. His face suddenly became pale and he stammered, this subordinate, trash." Face black, Yu Heng's right hand suddenly grabbed at the air. Like an exploding watermelon, the vice-commander was crushed and his limbs were sent flying. A while later, his anger finally subsided slightly. His dark gaze stared at the floor covered in limbs and flesh. He sank into deep thought. He usually favored his nephew and had high hopes for him. He hadn't expected his nephew to be so stupid. To do such a thing at such a sensitive time, and for someone to have gotten a hold of it and broadcasted it far and wide. The entire heavy earth core was now in an extremely reactive situation. He was deeply disappointed in Yu Zizhou. He knew that Yu Zizhou had been pursuing Ji Liu. He had also supported it, but he hadn't thought that Yu Zizhou would be so small-minded. To do such a stupid thing for intangible gains. Those Yao channels were continuously discussing and repeating this matter these days. Thinking about this, murderous intent rose. Those Yao channels should all die. But the one who should die the most was that Xiao Mo Gu. Yu Heng was cunning. The situation was becoming fiercer over time, like oil being poured onto a fire. He could see with a glance that someone was stirring up trouble from the shadows. But who was it? To make trouble for him at this time? His gaze flashing, he calmed down. Several names came to mind. These people might not be the mastermind, but they would not refuse the chance to add stones when he was drowning. Humph, it is not so easy to see my humiliation. Yu Heng recovered his calm. The harsh scent of blood in the room caused his to wrinkle his brow in discontent. He shouted towards outside the door, "Come. Darren." A guard came in. When he saw the ground meat on the ground, his expression couldn't help but change. Yu Heng said indifferent as though nothing had happened. "Clean this up." "Yes." Swept by the corps commander's gaze, the guard's scalp tingled and coldness shot up from his feet. Yu Heng walked out of the room without turning looking back. Yu Zizhou's limbs were cold. He had never expected the matter would transform into this. A person that was akin to an ant, no matter how outstanding his talent was, what was the use? In this era, if a person did not have a background or support, wasn't he a lamb that would be slaughtered? The gazes that had once been admiring and respectful in the past had all changed. Instead they were gazes of disdain, scorn. No one was willing to come close to him. Even the teachers of the Yao art house shook their heads when they saw him as though they were pitying him, and sighing. Why was it like this? He balled his hands into fists so tightly his fingers went white. He was with furious and seethed with hatred. That one Xiao Mo Gu. Just a Xiao Mo Gu. Just that one was enough to make him an outcast. Were these people all blind? He suddenly saw his best friend walking towards his direction. He seemed to have found someone to talk to and instinctively walked towards his best friend. But his best friend's expression changed when he made eye contact. He pretended not to see Yu Zizhou and walked towards another direction. Yu Zizhou's feet were nailed to the ground. He looked dazedly at the disappearing figure of his best friend. Yu Heng stood with a warm smile in front of the reporters. I had not expected that our drafting of Xiao Mo Gu would be of concern to the public. Truthfully, this was unexpected to me. I have also heard what everyone has speculated about this matter, so today, I have come to make some clarifications. All the reporters opened their ears. Many people think that this matter was caused by my nephew, Zizhou, scheming in the shadows in order to take revenge on Xiao Mo Gu. Kiki, Zizhou is my nephew, I have great affection for him, I do not refute any of this. There is one point about this matter that everyone has correctly guessed. I learned about Xiao Mo Gu from my nephew. Whoosh, the reporters all rumbled. They hadn't thought that Yu Heng would not refuse to admit it. He really was too arrogant. Many people showed furious expressions. Yu Heng's hands made a motion to calm the press down. His presence as the military commander of a corps instinctively came out. The reporters that had become restless started to calm down. In contrast to everyone's malicious speculations, my nephew admires Xiao Mo Gu very much. Due to this, he had done his best to recommend Xiao Mo Gu to me, it definitely was not done out of maliciousness. The people below all had disbelieving looks. There were even those that laughed. Yu Heng seemed to not have heard it. His expression became grave as he said, truthfully, as a soldier, no matter if it is me or our heavy earth corps, we have prepared to sacrifice ourselves at such a dangerous time. I will say this now. I hope the Council of Elders will consider our heavy earth corps first. We have already finished preparing to go to the front lines. All of the reporters were stunned by Corps Commander Yu Heng's request. The losses at the front lines had greatly impacted morale. Some corps even started to fear combat. Now, Corps Commander Yu Heng was publicly requesting to go to war. The impassioned words instantly ignited everyone. The clapping was like thunder. Yu Heng did not show joy and said in a heavy voice, life and death is not the most important in my eyes, but if defeat is caused due to the lack of strength, then we have to bear the blame. Everyone might feel we are domineering, that we have other intentions, but you do not know how desperate and desirous we are of talent. Why are we so desperate? Why so desirous? Because we know how heavy the responsibilities placed on our shoulders are. Because we know we cannot disappoint everyone's hopes. Clap, clap, clap. The reporters below were excited, their faces completely red. A dignified expression came onto Corps Commander Yu Heng's face as he slowly said, Mr. Xiao Mo Gu. We will wait for you with the position of an officer. Please give your strength to help my heavy earth corps. The entire room was silent. All the reports were shocked by these words. Such skill. Ming Juzi's face was pale as he murmured. All of his scheming and moves turned to dust in front of Yu Heng's performance. In front of Corps Commander Yu Heng's experience, Ming Juzi felt just how poor his performance had been. What made him feel even more hopeless was that his plan had actually set the stage to help Corps Commander Yu Heng. Nan Yu and the others also had white faces. In one night, public opinion had turned against them. Everyone praised Corps Commander Yu Heng and started to support this drafting of Xiao Mo Gu. There were people that continuously came out to call Xiao Mo Gu in hopes he would accept the draft notice. He was offered an officer position, suggesting how sincere Corps Commander Yu Heng was. Those people that assumed that Corps Commander Yu Heng was planning on making Xiao Mo Gu cannon fodder, but open your eyes and look. The position of officer's lowest requirement was to be a silver battle general. It was definitely an important position in the corps. If Xiao Mo Gu still refused the draft call in this situation, that would be unacceptable. Zhuo Mo was also full of admiration. It had to be said that Yu Heng's move was beautiful. Ming Ju Zi had not expected it, he had not expected it, and the cunning Pu Yao had also not expected it. Looking at the pale Ming Ju Zi and others, he smiled. He knew what Nan Yu and the others were worried about. The present situation for Xiao Mo Gu was akin to riding a tiger and being unable to get off. If he still refused the draft notice, Xiao Mo Gu's popularity would plummet and his reputation would be stained. But that was for Xiao Mo Gu. To Zhuo Mo, who was only able to appear in the 10-finger prison, was there a real consequence? His reputation in the Yao world? What was that? Previously, he had been worried about the safety of Nan Yu and the others. Now, this had been solved. With the matter the subject of so much attention, the heavy Earth Corps would not dare to seek revenge against Nan Yu and the others. Regardless of whether Zhuo Mo accepted the draft notice or not, they had no reason to make trouble for Nan Yu and the others. This also caused the crazy plan that Zhuo Mo had originally prepared to not have a place to be used. In the sea of consciousness, Pu Yao's face was dark. His narrow bloody pupil was like a blade flashing with an alarming light. He said coldly, "Good move. Such a good move. TSK, there is someone this interesting." The usually warm and humble Wei also showed dislike. We cannot let him off so easily. Putting down his worries about Nan Yu and the others, Zhuo Mo's gaze turned towards the impassioned Yu Heng in the Yao channel. He felt like he had swallowed a fly. Of course we can't let this guy go. Zhuo Mo narrowed his eyes that flashed viciously. The three miraculously had a consensus of opinion. Let's get him. You're tuning in to the Wang Lin's Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.